Chapter 581. That's the heavenly origin shadow-forming ability from the Taishu Temple, right? Venerable Perpetual Joy said hesitantly. He looked at the peaceful king, Shi Zhongyue. With the strength of their souls as soul cultivators, the powerful figures could clearly see the thousands of figures in the dragon arena that resembled wandering souls. The power of Shi Tiany's right eye's dual pupil was powerful, but it could not fool the spectating soul cultivators. Shi Zhongyue stared at Shi Tiany in the arena and nodded slowly. That's the heavenly origin shadow-forming ability, the most powerful ability from the Taishu Temple. However, normally speaking, it's impossible to create so many soul projections. The reason for this effect is because of the boulder's powerful soul and the unique mysteries of the power of the dual pupil. Thousands of souls surrounded Shi Tianhao. All of Shi Tianhao's body erupted with vital energy, becoming like a great cauldron. The heat made the surrounding space seem to distort. Lightning techniques were the most effective against soul techniques, followed by the tough, masculine bodies of powerful cultivators. Powerful vital energy made it difficult for souls to approach. However, too much water could extinguish the fire, and too much fire could also boil away the water. Shi Tiany had basically created over 1,000 souls right now. Every single one of them was condensed and powerful, blotting out the sky like dark clouds. Even with Shi Tianhao's powerful body, he struggled to keep them at bay. Go! Shi Tiany bellowed out in the air. Immediately, a large number of souls lunged towards Shi Tianhao. As the souls charged over, they twisted and deformed, losing Shi Tiany's original appearance. They turned into invisible blades, stabbing down like a storm. Shi Tiany wanted to directly assassinate the tiny Shi Tianhao's soul. Aside from the primordial divinity powerhouses, everyone else was frowning. In the face of such a powerful spiritual attack, the effect of one's physical body and transcendence power was really limited. Shi Tiany was burning his divine soul to obtain an extremely powerful attack and penetrating power. If it were anyone else using this move, they would be harming themselves first before harming the enemy, dying together with the enemy. But when Shi Tiany used heavenly essence shadow form, his divine soul manifested thousands of times. It wasn't splitting, but almost duplicating. Although it could not be maintained for a long time, as long as the spell lasted, it was equivalent to having thousands of souls. Sacrificing some of them would not affect him at all. Thousands of soul attacks. Even if Shi Tianhao's flesh and blood were powerful, and he could automatically form a defense that would melt Shi Tiany's soul, it would still be very difficult for him to resist such a concentrated attack. Shi Tiany was completely using numbers to bully him. However, Shi Tianhao remained calm and fearless. He circulated the dermic powers of the four symbols heaven opening scripture, causing the space behind him to suddenly warp and transform into a chaos hole furnace. The great furnace was opened. The inside was filled with black earth. It was silent and silent like a black hole. A violent, bestial roar came from within, like the cries of an infant. It was extremely ear-piercing, and the image of a ferocious beast appeared. It had the body of a goat and the face of a human. Its eyes were under its armpits, and it had tiger teeth and human claws. It was one of the four primordial fierce beasts, Tao Tai. The black earth chaos hole opened, as if a giant primordial ferocious beast had awakened from its slumber. It had been sleeping for countless years and was extremely hungry. As soon as it woke up, it wanted to eat. It opened its abyss-like mouth and swallowed the heavens and the earth. Shi Tiany's manifested soul attacks all fell into the black earth chaos hole furnace. There was no sound in an instant, like a clay ox entering the sea. Not only can it devour divine abilities and dermic powers, but it can even devour the power of souls. Shi Tiany had seen Shi Tianhao use this divine ability in the Shi family's mansion. It had directly bitten Shi Tiany's father's heaven and earth dharma form and refused to let go. He could only watch helplessly as he was devoured. Now, his own soul attacks were the same. Sure, Tianhao did not reject any of them and devoured as many as he could. Sure, Tianyi's eyes flickered slightly. He immediately stopped the spell and withdrew the remaining souls into his body. Even with the strength of his soul, he still felt slightly tired. The destruction of the souls manifested by the heavenly essence manifestation did not cause him any harm. However, using this divine ability itself was extremely taxing on his soul. Now, he had returned without any results. He could even clearly feel that after devouring his own soul, Shi Tianhao's soul had become even stronger. Shi Tianhao had never had the habit of passively taking a beating. While Shi Tianyi was using his spells to launch attacks, he was also seriously searching for Shi Tianyi's exact location. This time, he was sure that he had found a right target. Time! Shi Tianhao raised his right fist and activated the time symbol of the black-yellow forward formula, suppressing Shi Tianyi's spirit and causing the time in his body to stagnate. Shi Tianyi's soul was strong, so he was not restricted much. However, he also felt as if his whole body had become a clay puppet. He could not speak, could not move, and even the thoughts in his mind had become slow. He tried to break free, but Shi Tianhao's attacks were like waves, wave after wave. After the time symbol, he immediately followed up with the U symbol, completely freezing Shi Tianyi's body and making him unable to move. And Shi Tianhao himself had already approached like a bolt of lightning, bombarding Shi Tianyi with a heavy punch. At the critical moment, Shi Tianyi once again displayed the motionless King Buddha body to withstand Shi Tianhao's blow, but the Buddhist light around his body was almost completely shattered, and his Buddha-like body was covered with cracks like a spider web. Shi Tianyi activated the Heaven Ascension technique, instantly leaving Shi Tianhao far behind again. Shi Tianhao once again activated the U symbol, and the bronze void cauldron lit up, shaking the space so that Shi Tianyi, who was in the early Yuanying realm, could not escape through space travel. At this moment, Shi Tianyi suddenly shouted, "Open!" In the void, a large number of white clouds emerged, vast and ethereal, quickly filling the world, dyeing the dark red sky of the ancient sky dragon domain white. The white clouds tumbled rapidly, and in the center of the sea of clouds, there was infinite light flashing. Slowly, as if the door of a divine kingdom was opening. In the stands, the spectators suddenly burst into an uproar. Old Sword Immortal, Dao Master Lan Ting, and the others looked at each other, and even their faces were filled with shock. That's the Central Heaven Gate. The Central Heaven Gate of the 9 heavens of the Taishu technique. Kuang Heng actually passed this great Dao mystique to Shi Tianyi. Even Qin Emperor Shi Yu frowned slightly, looking at the people in the Taishu temple in the west. The 9 heavens of the Taishu technique was the supreme great Dao mystique of the Taishu temple, the strongest combat technique, and its status in the Taishu temple was equivalent to the immortal heavenly sword Qi in the Mount Shu sword sect and the Vairocana palm seal in the Great Lane temple. At the same time, it was also recognized as the #1 technique in the human cultivation world of the Divine Land. In the history of the Divine Land, there were 2 widely spread sayings about the 9 heavens. One was from the Heavenly Gate, a super sect that was once powerful in the ancient times, but had now been completely annihilated. The Heavenly Gate defined the 9 heavens as the central Great Heaven, the Eastern Heavenly Heaven, the Northeastern Heavenly Heaven, the Northern Black Heaven, the Northwestern Dark Heaven, the Western Dark Heaven, the Southwestern Vermilion Heaven, the Southern Fire Heaven, and the Southeastern Yang Heaven. The other was the definition of the Taishu Temple. Of the 9 heavens, the first was the Central Heaven, the second was the Envious Heaven, the third was the Subordinate Heaven, the fourth was the Gung Heaven, the fifth was the Bai Heaven, the sixth was the Open Heaven, the seventh was the Harmonious Heaven, the eighth was the Shun Heaven, and the ninth was the Chung Heaven. 9 was the extreme of numbers, and it had the meaning of infinity. Above the Chung Heaven was the Great Tao, which was endless and mysterious. According to legend, the White Cloud Mountain at the gate of the Taishu Temple has the 9 heavens imperial court, mysterious beyond compare. Only the most outstanding disciples of the Taishu Temple can enter to receive baptism and comprehend the supreme ability, the nine heavens technique of the Taishu Temple. The great Tao that Shi Tianyi was displaying now was the first heaven of the Taishu Temple, the central heaven gate. The central heaven gate opened, and Shi Tianyi's mana surged. He stared at Shi Tianhao and said, "The gate is easy to say, but it is mysterious. There are thousands of techniques in the world, and if you can find the right path, you can enter the gate. The gate is the beginning, the entrance, and the starting point. In a dilemma, if you can find the gate, there will be a path." As he spoke, Shi Tianyi entered the light gate in a flash. It was mysterious, but once he entered the light gate, he immediately got rid of the effects of Shi Tianhao's universe and Ian techniques. Seeing this, Venerable Sword Flying Snow sighed and said, "This person with dual pupils has benefited from his misfortune. If he didn't get one of his dual pupils blinded in the void battlefield, he wouldn't have gotten this opportunity to accept the baptism of the Nine Heavens Gate and learn the great Tao of the Middle Heaven Gate." Venerable Sword Flying Snow stared at the battlefield below and nodded. Shi Tianhao is in trouble now. The next moment, Shi Tianyi appeared again, but in another place. He calmly looked at Shi Tianhao and formed a hand seal with both hands. The endless white clouds above suddenly split open, and a bright golden light seemed to pierce through the vault of heaven. Even the crimson sky above the ancient sky dragon domain was broken open, revealing a dark void that was dotted with stars. The appearance was somewhat similar to the appearance of the nine-light sky-shattering formation when it was activated, although it was much weaker and could not be compared to the super-fierce formation. But the fact that Shi Tianyi, a mere Yuanian cultivator, was able to attract the terrifying power of the stars from afar still made everyone present speechless. The second heaven of the Taishu Temple, the divine light of the envious stars, an incomparably complex giant rune, about an acre in circumference, condensed in the sky. Countless haze of light spread in all directions, and a large amount of starlight passed through the endless void and gathered on this rune, making the rune more and more dazzling, like a small sun. The expression on Shi Zongyue's face changed as he said, "In addition to the Zhong Tian Gate, even the divine light of the envious stars has been mastered." Shi Tianhao looked up at the giant rune in the sky, frowning slightly. He could feel the power of this technique. The power of the stars was so magnificent that it was not a power that cultivators below the primordial spirit realm could use. To move 1,000 caddies with 4 tails, one would need at least 4 tails of power to use. The remarkable technique of the Taishu Temple could really be said to be wonderful. For the first time since the start of the battle, Shi Tianhao really felt threatened. At the same time, Shi Tianyi stretched out his right hand. As the white clouds surged, endless light appeared, turning into mysterious runes one after another, drifting into space, and a powerful force forcibly locked Shi Tianhao's body in place. Shi Tianhao was slightly stunned to find that he could not move, as if he had used the U technique to lock the space where the enemy was. This was another magical effect of the Zhong Tian Gate, the first heaven of the Taishu Temple. The opening of the gate is the way out, the beginning, the starting point. Shi Tianyi said faintly, "When the gate is closed, it's the end, and there's no way out." He used the Zhong Tian Gate together with the divine light of the envious stars, so that Shi Tianhao could not dodge and could only take the bombardment of the stars. As they spoke, the giant rune in the sky above their heads reached its peak, and it was so dazzling that one could not look straight at it. In the next moment, a thick golden beam of light shot straight down at Shi Tianhao below. The blazing light turned everything into nothingness, and everything that stood in its way was penetrated, destroyed, and destroyed. Chapter 582. The power of the stars was tremendous. Shi Tianyi had succeeded in practicing the divine light of the stars, so although he could gather the light of the stars, it was only a very feeble sliver. However, In a battle of magical powers between cultivators below the nascent divinity realm, this trace of it was already an extremely ferocious killing move. Even the spectators in Xianmin Tianzong sat up straight, staring at the two of them. Cold light flashed through Wang Lin's eyes. Now that he practiced the four symbols heaven-opening scripture and had already formed a nascent soul, he was not afraid of Shi Tiany's attack. However, if he returned to the battlefield in space, and Shi Tiany used this move, the outcome of the battle would be very difficult to predict. Xiao Yin murmured to himself, "It's already on par with the firmament fire lotus from a combination of nether evil brilliance and true flames of the sun." His firmament fire lotus was a combination of nether evil brilliance and true flames of the sun. It was the most powerful combination among the dual fire lotuses. Of course, once he formed a nascent soul and his cultivation increased, whether it was the firmament fire lotus or a single true flame, his strength would increase drastically. Although Zhu Yi didn't say anything, his expression also turned solemn. As a spectator, he could clearly sense the viciousness of Shi Tiany's move. Right now, in the dragon arena, Shi Tianhao, who faced it head-on, obviously sensed it even more clearly. In particular, not only did Shi Tiany attack with the divine light of the stars, but he even used the ability of the central heaven's gate to restrict Shi Tianhao's movements, which made Shi Tianhao's situation even more dangerous. However, Shi Tianhao himself was unfazed. He watched the golden pillar of light hurtle towards him calmly. The space behind him suddenly opened, and the second chaotic cauldron was opened. In the cauldron, invisible storms constantly roared out. Layers of chaotic space surged. The peaceful king, Shi Zongyue, saw this and could not help but be stunned. Isn't that the spatial storm of the four divine winds? Wait, no, it's not refining a real spatial storm, but it's giving birth to the concept of power. The figure of a colossal, vicious beast appeared in the chaotic cauldron at this moment. It was like a yellow sack, scarlet like alchemic fire, with 6 legs and 4 wings, but it was faceless. The chaos, one of the 4 primordial ferocious beasts on the same level as Tao Tai. Shi Tianhao let out a long roar. The chaotic force in the second chaotic cauldron strengthened his powerful body, and he directly soared into the sky, facing the golden light beam that was bombarding him. From the beginning, Shi Tianhao had never thought of dodging. He punched out, and space immediately shattered. The vicious beast chaos transformed into a violent storm that collided head-on with the thick golden beam of light. The resplendent golden light flickered incessantly, so bright that the spectators couldn't open their eyes, and their divine senses were also scorching hot. Only a few people could see that Shi Tianhao was standing in midair, the power of chaos constantly shattering the divine light gathered by the stars in the sky. However, how vast was the power of astral energy? Even if Shi Tiany could only borrow a little bit of it, it was already boundlessly vast, causing Shi Tianhao to unceasingly retreat. If it wasn't for the fact that Shi Tianhao's physical body was strong and sturdy enough, just the scattered starlight alone would have burned him to ashes. Shi Tianhao clenched his right hand into a fist, forcefully resisting the bombardment of starlight. He spread the fingers of his left hand and strengthened it with the power of Tao Tai from the first chaotic cauldron, grabbing the golden starlight from the side. The Tao Tai transformed into a dark land, constantly devouring Shi Tiany's power of starlight. Shi Tiany frowned slightly, and he saw Shi Tianhao exhale. The 2 chaotic cauldrons behind him emitted a deafening roar, as if they had returned to the primordial era. The 2 great abilities worked together, directly shattering the huge golden beam of light. For a moment, the entire dragon arena was enveloped by dazzling golden light. Looking at the dragon arena from the ancient region of heavenly dragons outside, all they saw was endless golden light spurting out. None of the spectators said anything right now, but they were all unsettled. The 2 people in the intense battle before them truly lived up to their reputation as young prodigies. Boulder was tough enough. He practiced the most powerful ability of the Taishu Temple, the 9 heavenly layer method of the Grand Void. Whether it was the central heaven's gate or the divine light of the gathering stars, they both possessed startling power. Either one of them was enough to run amok in the Yuanying realm. However, Boulder was even fiercer. He could actually take on the divine light of the gathering stars head-on. When they thought about how he was actually only a late golden elixir cultivator, while Shi Tianyi was an early Yuanying cultivator, it was even more shocking. Shi Chongyun watched this unfold expressionlessly. The imperial family of the Great Qin Empire had once been interested in making Shi Tianyi his successor. How could he not know about this? Shi Zongyue and Lord Changle exchanged glances, but they both shook their heads. It's a pity that neither Boulder nor Boulder can be used by our Great Qin Empire. A pity, what a pity. Within the golden ripples of light, Shi Tianhao stood proudly. He was already injured. Even with the toughness of his body, he was struggling to remain unscathed after enduring the bombardment of starlight. However, his presence surged, reaching a whole new level. As he bellowed out gently, a faint halo hovered above his head. In the halo, a colossal demonic beast constantly bobbed up and down. Someone recognized it and cried out, "Kuanpeng." The Kuanpeng seemed to be constantly bobbing up and down in the universe. When it sank, it turned into a fish. Its entire body was black and incomparably huge. Its body length was tens of thousands of miles. When it floated, it turned into a bird. It had cyan feathers, a golden beak, and white feathers on its head. When it spread its wings, it was thousands of miles wide. Although the area of the halo above Shi Tianhao's head was not large, the space was folded and extended. The onlookers could feel the shocking size of the Kuanpeng. Shi Tianhao was determined to use the blood essence of the 4 primordial beasts to refine his chaotic cauldron. However, his body had been strengthened by the Kuanpeng's true blood, and he had already integrated part of the Kuanpeng's magical powers. His shoulders suddenly shrugged, as if the Kuanpeng had emerged from the water and turned into a rock. In the next moment, the green rock spread its wings and soared into the sky. Shi Tianyi's central heavenly gate was directly lifted, and Shi Tianhao himself had already pounced in front of Shi Tianyi. His speed was so fast that even Shi Tianyi's ascending to heaven technique could not avoid him. The double pupil in Shi Tianyi's right eye shone with divine light. Countless clouds and mist appeared and weaved together to create an illusory creation. He dodged the calamity once again. Even with his vigorous magic power, activating the central heavenly gate and the enchanting star's divine light consumed too much of his magic power. He had no choice but to temporarily avoid the sharp edge of the small stone and accumulate his strength again. Silently, Shi Tianhao said, "Weren't you very confident before the battle started? Why was he hiding like a tortoise now? Where's your confidence? Where's your pride?" In the void, Shi Tianyi stood with his hands clasped behind his back. It was unknown whether he was real or fake, an illusion or a real person. He calmly looked at Shi Tianhao and said, "The power of the double pupils is my ability. What's wrong with me using it? On the other hand, haven't you always wanted to fight me? I'll be waiting for you to break my divine ability." The 2 chaotic cauldrons on Shi Tianhao's back roared violently, and the shadow of a rock hovered above his head. "Yuanying realm, and one of your eyes was blinded by my 3rd senior brother. I thought you would improve after learning the spells of Taishu Temple, but now you're only able to defend after being beaten by me in the late stage of Golden Elixir. If I were you, I would have found a hole in the ground and crawled into it." His words were as sharp as a knife. Among the people of Taishu Temple who were watching the battle, Kuang Heng, Xinlin Taoist, and Daoist Yunzong, who were 3 nascent divinity experts, did not mind it at all. However, Ding Runfeng and the other young disciples felt a burning pain on their faces. Shi Tianhao continued, "I do have the patience to fight with you, but I don't think you can open the Dragonstone Gate like this, can you? It's just a waste of time." "That is indeed a problem." Shi Tianyi nodded and said, "In that case, here I come." As he spoke, Shi Tianyi, who was in midair, put his palms together, and performed an incantation gesture. Then his body shone brightly. In the next moment, a deafening dragon roar came from the treasure light, and a giant white dragon rushed out from it, whistling as it charged towards Shi Tianhao. Shi Tianhao had to deal with it. He was trapped in the illusion created by Shi Tianyi's right pupil, so who knew if the attack was real or fake? He did not dodge, and continued to charge toward the giant white dragon. The Taotai chaotic hole behind him transformed into a dark land that resembled an abyss and swallowed the giant white dragon. In the next moment, Shi Tianhao was already in front of Shi Tianyi and punched him. But this time, Shi Tianyi dodged. His divine soul trembled, and his magical energy circulated. Shi Tianhao was immediately sure that the Shi Tianyi he had been talking to was the real one and not an illusion. But if he was the real one, why was the giant white dragon's attack so weak? Was it a bluff? Had he not recovered from the exhaustion from executing the 9 heavens of Taishu Temple? Or could it be that he had other plans? Feeling that something was amiss, Shi Tianhao suddenly stopped. Seeing him stop, Shi Tianyi smiled faintly. Your reaction isn't slow. As he spoke, Shi Tianhao felt the Taotai chaotic hole cauldron behind him suddenly tremble. It was as if there was an endless amount of power expanding inside. The power of Taotai in his chaotic hole cauldron was actually unable to devour and digest it. Although the Tao Ye's swallowing the heavens and devouring the earth was powerful, it had its limits in the current realm. And now, Shi Tianhao felt that the power that he had just devoured had exceeded the limits that the Taotai chaotic hole could withstand. In the dark chaotic hole cauldron, a dazzling purple light lit up and rumbled like thunder. Bolts of purple lightning shot up into the sky from within. That white dragon, just now, Shi Tianhao frowned. With a turn of his divine consciousness, he saw that the giant white dragon's magical energy had been devoured, but what was hidden within was revealed. The giant white dragon was just a cover to hide Shi Tianyi's real killer move. It was something that looked like a skull. Its entire body was pale gold and crystal clear. Countless purple lightning bolts surged from it, bombarding Shi Tianhao's Taotai chaotic hole as if there was no end to it. No matter how much the power of Taotai devoured and digested it, it could not offset it. Instead, more and more of it appeared. It's actually a treasure embryo. Shi Tianhao blinked his eyes. Shi Tianyi said faintly, "This is the raw material that I've prepared for myself when I reach the primordial soul realm in the future. There's a secret technique in the Taishu Temple that even an embryo can be used for sacrificial refining. Its power is stronger than ordinary yuanying treasures, but it will not erase the treasure's spirituality." Before he finished speaking, the purple lightning in the golden skull became more intense. It condensed into a vivid and lifelike figure. It was a giant bird with a leisurely expression, soaring in the sky, full of lightning. The giant bird figure formed, and the lightning suddenly became more intense. Chapter 583. The giant bird was huge and had a proud expression. The feathers on its chest and abdomen were pale gold. The feathers on its head and tail were emerald green, and the crown on its head was bluish purple. Its appearance was similar to that of a phoenix, but it was different. It looked much more ferocious, and its tricolored feathers were shining under the lightning. Dao Master Lan Ting, who was watching the battle, couldn't calm down. He looked at the skull in astonishment. Thunder Beast Ong Pa? That's the bone fragment of Ong Pa? Some knowledgeable people also recognized the origin of Shi Tianyi's magic weapon embryo. It turned out to be an Ong Pa skull that had achieved the immortal demon soul realm in its lifetime. Thunder Beast Ong Pa was the same as Dark Beast Ming, they were both primordial great demon beasts in the past. They were shaped like phoenixes and had tricolored feathers. They could control the power of golden thunder and lightning. It was said that Ong Po was born from the thunder at the beginning of the world. In the primordial era, it was known as the Emperor of Thunder. Today, Ong Po was almost extinct in the Tianyuan Great World. It was uncertain whether it was extinct or not, but it had been a long time since a living Ongp appeared. Lin Feng on the E stands looked at this Ongp skull, also feeling interested. Oh, interesting, even though it's just a skull, but it's at least been nourished for tens of thousands of years. The true spirit hasn't dissipated, but the evil aura is completely gone. It can be used to forge magic treasures, unlike my Minglone skeleton. Once it's forged, it's the same as reviving Minglone. Shi Tianyi also cherished this Ongpa skull very much after he obtained it. It was a candidate for refining a magic weapon after he reached the primordial spirit realm in the future. Usually, it was nourished by the secret method of the Taishu Temple, and it could also be used as a magic weapon to fight against enemies, but its spirituality would not be obliterated. This time, he sent the Ongpa skull into Shi Tianhao's Tao Tai chaotic hole, and the powerful spiritual power suddenly exceeded the devouring limit of the Tao Tai chaotic hole. The violent thunder continued to explode, and Shi Tianhao's Tao Tai chaotic hole was about to be torn apart. If it's not enough to fight, then let's add magic weapons. Shi Tianhao turned his palm, and the bronze void cauldron immediately flew into the Tao Tai chaotic hole and directly stored the Ongpa skull. The interior of the cauldron was filled with dense spatial energy. Layers upon layers of space folded together, sealing the violent thunder. The skull turned into a purple light and instantly pierced through hundreds of layers of space, wanting to rush out of the bronze void cauldron. However, a pure white round mirror suddenly appeared above the cauldron. Another one of Shi Tianhao's Yuanying stage magical equipment, the icy cold mirror. A blue and white mirror light was emitted and immediately covered Ongpu Er's skull. The power of extreme cold broke out and sealed Ongpu Er's skull together with the void power of the bronze void cauldron. Amidst the lightning, Ongpuar's silhouette suddenly gained some spirituality. Its eyes flickered with purple light as it flapped its wings and soared into the sky. Its lightning energy surged once again. The bronze void cauldron shook incessantly, and the icy soul-cold light mirror floating above the cauldron also shook incessantly. The icy soul-cold light mirror and the bronze void cauldron worked together, but could not suppress this magic treasure embryo. Although it could not be compared to a magic treasure, it could exert some power after being nourished by the secret method of the Taishu Temple. Shi Tianhao raised the yellow heaven bell hammer and knocked hard on the bronze void cauldron. This time, the ripples did not spread outwards, but concentrated on the inside of the cauldron. The few treasures were locked in battle. Shi Tianhao put his palms together in front of his chest, and the two chaotic holes behind him suddenly changed directions. They were originally opening forward, but now they twisted together and opened face to face. Immediately after, the two chaotic hole cauldrons combined into one and disappeared in the void as if they had never appeared. However, Shi Tianyi frowned because he suddenly discovered that the connection with the Ongpa skull, which had always been connected to his mind, had been broken. Shi Tianhao took advantage of the time when his treasures were fighting with the Ongpa skull to combine the two chaotic hole cauldrons. The power of Tao Tai and the power of chaos joined forces to completely suppress this magic treasure embryo. In this way, you've lost. Shi Tianyi's brows relaxed, and he said indifferently, 2 Yuanying magic treasures and 2 great mystical powers were used to suppress my Ongpa skull. How are you going to fight with me next? Not to mention anything else, you won't be able to compete with me, who has already formed my nascent soul in the profound mysteries of space. Shi Tianyi stretched his palm forward and activated the central heavenly gate mystical power, imprisoning the void. A large number of light and shadow words were engraved in the space, and the space where the two of them were immediately distorted, oppressing Shi Tianhao. Shi Tianhao chuckled, and suddenly a long sword appeared in his hand. Although it was a long sword, it was made of stone. The edges of the blade were round, and it looked more like a slender stone strip. Only the tip of the sword flashed with a cold light. It was incomparably dazzling, and it exuded an invincible sharpness that could pierce through everything. It was as if all the sharpness of the entire sword was concentrated on the tip of the sword, causing the lethality of the sword to rise sharply. Wherever the tip of Shi Tianhao's sword pointed, it immediately pierced through the void and broke the imprisonment of the central heavenly gate's mystical power. You have a lot of treasures with you. Shi Tianyi raised his eyebrows slightly. He knew that Shi Tianhao had the bronze void cauldron and the ice soul-cold light mirror, but he didn't take them to heart. These two Yuanying realm artifacts combined were not as good as his uplift skull. However, this stone long sword was unexpected. After careful observation, Shi Tianyi nodded. So, it's a damaged artifact. The spirit of the artifact has been annihilated, but it has a strong foundation. It may not be impossible for it to rise again in the future. Even now, it was a rare treasure that surpassed most Yuanying realm artifacts, and it was not the slightest bit weaker than Shi Tianyi's uplift skull. Shi Tianhao pointed the tip of the sword at Shi Tianyi and said lightly, "Shi Tianyi, let's fight. Even if you have this sword, you're still not my opponent." Shi Tianyi's expression was calm. "I'm not very interested in your other things, but this sword is very good. I like it very much. You want it?" Shi Tianhao smiled. "Let's see if you have the ability to do so." Shi Tianyi nodded. "Then here I come." As he spoke, he raised his right hand toward the sky and pointed his left index finger at the center of his brows. This time, he was going to take the initiative to attack. The illusory power of creation in his right eye was not enough to defeat the enemy. If Shi Tianhao didn't take the initiative to attack, he wouldn't be easily deceived. Neither of them attacked, and they just stared at each other. Of course, Shi Tianyi was at a disadvantage because his uplift skull was still with Shi Tianhao. However, as soon as he moved, the expressions of the nascent divinity experts who were watching the battle changed slightly. Even Dao Master Yunzhan, who was in her own camp in Taishu Temple, had a fleeting look of surprise on her face. She turned to look at Kuang Heng and said, "Senior brother Kuang, he has even mastered the execution of the universe?" Kuang Heng nodded and said nothing. In the dragon arena, Shi Tianyi pointed his left index finger at the center of his brows and raised his right hand into the air like a blade. Afterwards, he swung it down slowly towards Shi Tianhao. As he swung his arm down, a crack immediately appeared in space. The crack's appearance directly ripped open space. It was not the darkness that regular cultivators tore open. Instead, dazzling white light erupted from the crack. The crack of white light twisted and leapt about, sucking in everything in the surroundings. The two sides of the crack pressed towards the center together. The elder sword immortal of the heavenly sword sect side. The third heavenly layer of grand void, execution of the universe. I didn't expect him to have even mastered this ability. The sword exalt of solar brilliance and the sword exalt of flying snow looked at one another. Not only does execution of the universe rip open space, but it has even generated the power of dimensions. It's like the power of two worlds colliding and pressing against each other. It's about to cut open the universe. The outcome has already been determined. Looks like the boulder still comes out on top. That's right. Earlier, the boulder blocked the divine light of the gathering stars, and he's already exhausted everything he has. Right now, over half of his strength has been used to suppress the boulder's ascending Pleiades skull. Now that he faces the even more powerful execution of the universe, he's probably done for even with the stone sword in hand. That's not necessarily true. Perhaps the boulder has some other tricks up his sleeve? Just as everyone discussed among themselves, Shi Tianhao remained calm. He pointed the stone sword in his right hand at Shi Tianyi and clenched his left hand into a fist, raising it towards the sky. Slowly, he spat out a single word, "Hong." Immediately, all of his powers surged violently. An aura that resembled a natural disaster immediately erupted. It was desolate, ancient, tremendous, and vicious. The spiritual chi in the entire dragon arena changed, like a tsunami had suddenly erupted from the calm ocean. Waves surged, and they all gathered towards Shi Tianhao. In the next moment, the spiritual chi suddenly fell silent together, but it did not vanish. Instead, it seemed to be preparing for an even greater eruption. Like the calm before the storm, the suffocating, terrifying atmosphere made the spectators fluster. Sure, Tiany's eyes flashed. The crack of white light before him had already slashed towards Sure Tianhao. At the same time, the tremendous power that had accumulated up erupted loudly where Sure Tianhao's sword pointed. The power was so violent, like a flood, sweeping through the creations of the world and all life. It rushed out in an unstoppable manner. Countless talismans, inscriptions, and formations rose and fell in the flood, gathering together and turning into a golden flood of light that collided viciously with the crack of white light Sure Tiany had unleashed. A clash of the strongest. Sure Tianhao's third technique of the forwards method of black and yellow, the Hong formula, forcefully took on Sure Tiany at the third heavenly layer of Grand Void, execution of the universe. Immediately, the entire dragon arena became a sea of light. Half was golden, and the other half was white. Neither gave way to the other, constantly colliding. In the next moment, they wove together again, rising and falling, clashing endlessly. In the end, the sea of light erupted loudly. A rain of light filled the surroundings. At this moment, two strands of spiritual chi wove together and rose up, rushing towards the white jade gate hidden in the air together. The Dragonstone Gate erupted with golden light, and all of the carved dragons opened their eyes together. Their gazes were dignified as they roared out together. Within the roars, the Dragonstone Gate suddenly trembled. The two gates actually opened slowly. Light flowed through the gates, leading to an unknown miniature world. Everyone in the Great Qin Empire had mixed expressions. The Dragonstone Gate that had not opened for several millennia had finally opened again today because of the battle between two young prodigies. In the dragon arena, the mist of light dispersed, gradually revealing two figures facing off in the distance. Whether it was Sure Tianhao or Sure Tiany, both of them were in horrible shape right now. The little Sure Tianhao's right shoulder slanted down to his left abdomen, revealing a huge wound. His flesh was badly mutilated, and even with his almost indestructible body, he was still injured by Sure Tiany's cutting the universe from the heavens. The injury looked extremely terrifying, almost cutting him in half. However, Sure Tiany was in an even worse state. Not only was he riddled with wounds, but his entire right arm had vanished from his shoulder. Even a piece of his right shoulder was missing. Even with the strength of Sure Tiany's soul, he felt like he was about to faint from such heavy wounds. However, he remained as stern as before. He had a double pupil in his right eye, and the two pupils revolved together like the sun and moon alternating. An aura of power that was even more profound than before radiated out. Chapter 584. Although they were both seriously injured, the two young heavens, chosen ones stood proudly and stared at each other. There was a huge wound on Sure Tianhao's body. Not only did it damage him, but it also damaged his almost indestructible body. It was like a dam that was not broken, but once a hole appeared, it would cause the whole defense to drop. Sure Tiany losing his right arm was not just a simple injury to his body. He used the magical power of cutting the universe from the heavens, and his whole body's essence, chi, and spirit were all concentrated together. This time, other than his body, even his spirit and Yuanying were heavily injured. Sure Tiany's right eye flashed with an unprecedented brightness, and an aura of power that was more mysterious than before was emitted from it. The gaze turned into a golden light mist that enveloped Sure Tiany's whole body, and in the light mist, there were countless talisman characters undulating. My dual pupils will always be the strongest existence. Sure Tiany's tone was calm. His left eye, which was like a normal person's, swept across the Xianmen Tianzong camp and stopped on Wang Lin. His gaze fell on Sure Tianhao again. I actually wanted to leave this power to your senior brother Wang Lin, but your power is really beyond my expectations. You are qualified to see the power of my double pupils. As he spoke, The void where Shirtiani was distorted strangely. His right arm, which had been turned into nothing by Shir Tianhao's attack, gradually appeared in the light, and was about to recover to its original state. The onlookers were in an uproar. Xiao Yin, Zhu Yi, and Yu Hongyan turned to look at Wang Lin at the same time. Wang Lin's expression was solemn, and he shook his head. It's not the Avicii immortal body. Yang Qing didn't say anything. She stared at Shi Tianyi and observed carefully. She frowned and said, "It's also not some kind of healing method. There's no concept of creating the power of regeneration." Wang Lin nodded and stared at Shi Tianyi's broken arm that was gradually recovering. Yes, and it's not just healing the body. Even the spirit and yuanying that were damaged in the process of fighting with Junior Brother are also recovering. This feeling, it's as if little Junior Brother's attack didn't exist, or perhaps it didn't really hit him. Yu Hongyan raised his eyebrows. But I clearly hit him just now, and he was heavily wounded. He was barely alive. It wasn't an illusion created by the double pupil in his right eye. I really hit him. How could he be gone just like that? At this moment, Lin Feng said calmly, Shi Tianyi has two different uses for his left and right pupils. His left I can see through illusions and discern truth, as well as the flaws in his opponent's mystical arts. Previously, he was completely blinded in the void battlefield and can't recover. The remaining one is the right eye. It can create illusions and simulate a fictional world to deceive the opponent's senses. Lin Feng leisurely looked at Shi Tianyi. When both eyes are intact, Shi Tianyi's dual pupils have a special characteristic. When one of them is closed, the strength of the other will increase. Everyone came to a realization. So, when his left pupil was destroyed, the power of his right pupil increased by another level. Lin Feng said lightly, "Exactly. Previously, his right eye could only create illusions, but now it has improved. It can erase reality and turn reality into illusion." He smiled slightly. Shi Tianyi used the power of his right pupil to turn what really happened to him into an illusion. Zhu Yi frowned. Doesn't that mean that as long as he isn't killed instantly and his right eye isn't destroyed, any attack that causes real damage to him will be reversed and canceled? Xiao Yin was concerned about another question. This kind of power of his, can it only be used on himself? Can it be used on little Junior Brother or other people he's fighting with? With Shi Tianyi's current cultivation, it can only be used on himself, and he can't use it consecutively. Once his cultivation progresses in the future, and the power of the dual pupils becomes stronger and stronger, everything will be possible. Lin Feng said indifferently, but there's no need to worry too much. The changes between reality and illusion, the mysteries of opposing reality and illusion, have always been the superior concept of power contained within the two extremes. If you comprehend the mysteries of reality and illusion, you'll be able to suppress the changes of his dual pupils. Lin Feng glanced at Shi Tianyi, and the corner of his lips curled up slightly. Don't worry, he can't do anything. The eyes of Xiao Yin and the others all flickered when they heard that, and they looked at the dragon arena again. There, Shi Tianhao stood in the air and looked at Shi Tianyi calmly. He said indifferently, "It's already been 12 years since you owed me. It's about time you pay me back today." The light dispersed, and the light in Shi Tianyi's right dual pupil had dimmed slightly. He directly shut his right eye, but his expression was extremely good. The severe injuries from his clash with Shi Tianhao earlier seemed like a dream, like they had never existed in the first place. "I've never owed you anything. Everything in the world belongs to those who are capable," Shi Tianyi said calmly. "If I were still in swaddling clothes back then, and you could already walk and cultivate, then obviously none of this would have happened. Perhaps you would be the one gouging out my eyes instead, and I wouldn't be the one obtaining your sovereign's foundation." He looked at Shi Tianhao before him, and mixed feelings flashed through his open left eye. "I have to admit, I really never thought that not only would you still be alive, but you'd even be able to stand before me right now and grow to such a level, even opening the Dragonstone Gate with me. You can be proud of yourself for forcing me to use all of my trump cards." Shi Tianyi's face regained its calm. "But now it's all over. My physical condition is still at its peak, and you, with your current injuries, you can't even suppress my on-to-a skull, right? The void behind Shi Tianhao was vibrating slightly, like rippling water. It was not the result of his own or Shi Tianyi's power, but the on-to-a skull was constantly resisting, trying to break through the suppression of Shi Tianhao's two chaotic cauldrons. Just give it a try. Shi Tianhao's expression was indifferent. Shi Tianyi shook his head. You're still a child after all. You should know that being stubborn is useless. As he spoke, a bright brilliance emerged from between his eyebrows. You always thought I got something from you. Fine, then I'll let you see it at the last moment. Shi Tianyi calmly looked at Shi Tianhao in front of him. However, this is my power. It is now, and it will be in the future. As he spoke, the brilliance between Shi Tianyi's eyebrows grew more and more dazzling, turning the entire ancient sky dragon domain from crimson to pure white. The light did not seem to be blazing, but the terrifying power fluctuations shook the heavens. It was not that the light was powerful, but that it seemed to contain infinite possibilities. A massive number of talisman characters emerged in the brilliance, arranged into one mysterious pattern after another, and the next moment suddenly scattered and regrouped, and then turned into a completely different pattern, rising and falling in a cycle. Shi Tianyi said word by word, "This is my divine light of end. The concept of power, the end of all things, the breaking point. Wherever it passed, everything else would be interrupted, ended prematurely, and forced to draw a full stop." The brilliance shot out from between Shi Tianyi's eyebrows, turning into a shocking rainbow. Within the rainbow light were the lights and shadows of gods and Buddhas flashing, like a great bell, and the sound of the heavenly Tao shaking chanting was incessantly heard. Divine light of creation, establishing a supreme spirit platform, condensing a supreme pill cauldron, forming a purple core, and finally successfully forming a nascent soul. It was truly the creation of heaven and earth, like a favored child of the heavens, bearing the great Tao of heaven and earth, and possessing a unique and powerful power. Everyone present knew of the existence of the divine light of creation, and their expressions were extremely solemn. What appeared in front of them was almost a legendary existence. This divine light of creation would grow together with Shi Tianyi, becoming stronger and stronger, possessing nearly infinite potential and power. Shi Tianhao looked at the divine light that pierced through the heavens and earth and let out a rare sigh. He softly said, "That is not yours, it is mine." Everyone in the surroundings was silent. If not for what happened in the past, and his future path of cultivation was smooth, then the true owner of this divine light of end should indeed be Little Stone. Shi Tianhao calmly faced the divine light of end, and suddenly a clear light shone brightly above his head, and a golden elixir flashing with purple light appeared. The golden elixir was like a transparent amber glass, and within the golden elixir, an extremely bright divine light continuously circulated. The divine light seemed to contain all things in the world, including the mysteries of the ancient times. The divine light was originally very weak, but now that it sensed the existence of the divine light of end, the divine light in Shi Tianhao's golden elixir erupted loudly, rapidly strengthening. It's also a divine light of creation. Even the group of soul-form powerhouses lost their composure now. They watched on in surprise. Little Stone has really undergone Nerva rebirth. It's not just him. He's actually given birth to another divine light of creation. The entire dragon arena was thrown into an uproar. Everyone stared at Shi Tianhao in shock. Now, this is a true prodigy of heaven. Shi Tianhao was calm. The divine light of creation that should have only truly ripened after forming a nascent soul had actually sprouted before the divine light of end that actually originated from the same source as him. Not only did he give birth to two divine lights of creation, but Shi Tianhao had even sprouted the divine light of creation in the later stages of the golden elixir. It was unparalleled, unprecedented, and difficult to replicate. He was truly unique. The moment the divine light of End lunged towards Shi Tianhao's golden elixir erupted with a resplendent streak of light that also shook up the world, colliding with the divine light of End valiantly. My divine light of End can cut through everything and end everything. Even if it confronts other divine lights of creation, I can still emerge victorious in a direct confrontation. Shi Tianyi's face was completely sunken. The gaze in his left eye was bone-chilling. I'm still the victor, Shi Tianhao said indifferently. Where there's an end, there's a starting point. Where there's an end, there's an origin. Who says the old end can't be the new origin? At the place where the two divine lights clashed, Shi Tianhao's divine light of creation was continuously being cut apart by Shi Tianyi's divine light of End. However, it was unable to be completely destroyed. Just as it was cut apart, it would extend once again. Shi Tianyi's expression finally changed. His divine light of End could completely cut off the spirituality of all things. It possessed an almost irreversible destructive power that could not be healed or restored. Back then, when he had cut off Wang Lin's bridge of helplessness in the void battlefield, even though Wang Lin possessed the extreme Tao rebirth, he was unable to recover in a short period of time. However, right now, he was actually unable to do anything to Shi Tianhao's newly born divine light of creation. I'll say it again, and it's also the last time. Shi Tianhao stared at the person in front of him, who had changed the fate of the first half of his life. That is my divine light, my first divine light of creation, named End. And my second divine light of creation, named Origin, has a beginning and an end. Only when the heavenly Tao is clear can it become creation. It was precisely because they came from the same origin that the concepts of their powers reinforced and restrained each other. That was why the divine light of End could hasten the divine light of Origin's maturation ahead of time. Shi Tianyi said coldly, "Even so, my cultivation level is higher than yours, and the state of my body, spirit, and transcendence energy are both better than yours. The divine light of creation's might is related to its wielder's abilities, so I will still be the victor." As if to prove his point, the divine light of End grew stronger and stronger, forcing the divine light of Origin to continuously retreat. Shi Tianhao shook his head. "You're definitely going to lose." As he spoke, he raised his hand, and an item appeared in his hand. Chapter 585. The divine light of finality between Shi Tianyi's eyebrows shone even brighter. Right now, a part of his mind was focused on controlling the divine light of finality, so he couldn't continue using his strongest technique, cutting the world from heaven. However, through the power of his dual pupils, he adjusted his condition to the peak before he was injured. He immediately formed a hand seal with both hands. A crack appeared in the sky. Golden light converged and turned into runes. It was the second tier of the great void realm, the divine light of starry sky. Shi Tianhao's two chaotic hole furnaces and two nascent soul-stage Dharma artifacts were used to suppress the Ong Tua skull. With his current injuries, even with the stone sword in hand, it was difficult for him to withstand the bombardment of the immense power of the stars. Whether it's the divine light of creation or something else, it's mine. Don't even think about it. Silently, Shi Tianyi said, "Or else you will die." Those who supported Shi Tianhao couldn't help but feel nervous, because Shi Tianhao had nowhere to retreat. He used the divine light of Origin to fight against the divine light of finality, but he was also attracted by it. If he stopped now, he would be killed by the true light of finality. Shi Tianhao naturally noticed Shi Tianyi's action. However, his expression was calm. Instead, the Kuan Pong above his head floated and rushed towards Shi Tianyi. Shi Tianyi's eyes turned cold. Just as he was about to activate the divine light of starry sky, his pupils suddenly contracted. He stared at Shi Tianhao's left hand. There was something in Shi Tianhao's left hand. It was a white jade stone. It was transparent and smooth like a mirror. The The surface of the mirror was overflowing with colors. Seeing the jade stone, Sher Tiany's expression changed. Divine Illumination Stone. It was the treasure that Sher Tiany went through a lot of trouble to find in the void battlefield. It was the Divine Illumination Stone that he missed. The Divine Illumination Stone reflected the patterns of all things in the world. It could distinguish between truth and falsehood. It was similar to the power of Sher Tiany's dual pupil. If Sher Tiany could get this treasure, he could improve the power of his left dual pupil. In the end, not only did Sher Tiany fail to obtain the Illuminating Heaven Stone during his trip to the void battlefield, he even lost his left eye. Now that the Illumination Stone had suddenly appeared in Sher Tianhao's hands, Sher Tiany felt a sense of anger, as if someone had stolen something that belonged to him. However, this anger disappeared in a flash, and Sher Tiany quickly felt an extremely ominous premonition. At this moment, Sher Tianhao held the Illumination Stone in his hand and aimed it at Sher Tiany's right shoulder. A bright light fell directly on Sher Tiany's right shoulder. As the light flickered, Sher Tiany's entire right arm and shoulder instantly twisted violently. No! Sher Tiany let out a muffled groan. He could only feel the reality of being obliterated. That heart-wrenching injury returned to his body once more. His entire right arm had disappeared, and a large part of the right side of his torso near his shoulder was missing. Blood immediately spurted out. His divine soul was extremely damaged, and waves of dizziness once more appeared in his mind. Sher Tiany's divine soul was innately powerful, and this feeling was unprecedented. It made him feel extremely terrible. In his body, there was an infant that looked 70 to 80% similar to him. That was his Yuanying. His right arm suddenly exploded without warning. The injuries that had previously been eliminated returned to Sher Tiany's body like a tide. However, the power of his right eye could not be used a second time in a short period of time. He could only watch as everything happened. Under his heavy injuries, the divine light of envy of the stars that was about to be activated could only be stopped. Otherwise, with Sher Tiany's current physical condition, there was no way he could control this mystique. Affected by Sher Tiany's heavy injuries, even the divine light of destiny was forcibly pushed back by the divine light of origin. And an even greater threat was right in front of him. Sher Tianhao's body merged with the Kuan Peng's light and shadow, and he had already rushed in front of Sher Tiany. Although he was also injured, his injuries were lighter than Sher Tiany's. The situation between the two sides instantly reversed. I won't lose. Sher Tiany took a deep breath, and his remaining left hand formed a spell. White clouds surged, and a golden gate opened. He was about to break free from Sher Tianhao's attack through the central heaven gate. However, little Sher Tu would not give him this chance. With sharp eyes and quick hands, he directly threw the stone sword out, and it nailed the central heaven gate that was about to open. Sher Tiany was unable to escape at the first moment and was immediately caught by Sher Tianhao. In close combat, he was not Sher Tianhao's match to begin with. Now that he was fighting with one arm against two, he was forced to retreat again and again. However, he was also ferocious, and he used many mystiques to fight a bloody battle with Sher Tianhao. The divine light of destiny between his eyebrows became even more ferocious, and it continuously erupted. Some of the divine light of destiny broke through the obstruction of the divine light of origin and shot straight at Sher Tianhao. Sher Tianhao suddenly lowered his body, and his body tilted to the side. A terrible wound had already appeared on his left shoulder, and it was dripping with blood. However, he shouted angrily, and one hand grabbed Sher Tiany's left shoulder, and the other hand reached down, grabbing the back of his waist, and directly lifted Sher Tiany up. You stole my Dao foundation and became a supreme martial artist. Coming all the way to where you are today, you are only SOSO. Being lifted in midair by Sher Tianhao, his body was almost out of control. Sher Tiany's usually indifferent face was filled with unwillingness and humiliation. His left hand flashed, and he was about to slap Sher Tianhao's head with a backhand. However, Shi Tianhao's speed was faster, and he grabbed his body and smashed it down first. At the same time, his right leg lifted up, and he viciously kneed upwards. Boom! Shi Tianyi's motionless King Buddha body was completely shattered, and the sound of bones breaking came from his waist. It was as if a mountain had been broken in half. Seeing this scene, everyone sucked in a cold breath. Too ferocious. Big Rock has completely lost. Little Rock has won. In the Taishu Temple's camp, Down Master Cloudson suddenly stood up, witnessing this in shock. Kuang Hung and the Xianlin Taoist did not move, but their gazes were no longer calm. Shi Tianyi's body had been destroyed. In the Dragon Arena, Shi Tianyi's body suddenly lit up with heavy light. Within the light, a white flag fluttered in the wind, and the light immediately knocked back Shi Tianhao. The arcane treasure of the Taishu Temple, the Void Banner. At this moment, the protective arcane treasure that the Taishu Temple had bestowed upon Shi Tianyi finally came into effect, protecting him. One of them was an early Yuanying cultivator, while the other was a late golden elixir cultivator. By default, soul arcane treasures were forbidden in this battle, as it would affect the balance too much. The Battle of Soul Arcane Treasures was a battle between Xianmin Tianzong and the Taishu Temple, not a battle between Little Rock and Big Rock. As a result, both sides unleashed everything they had. Even the Stone Sword and the Ascending Plum Skull could not be regarded as arcane treasures. But at this moment, the self-aware Void Banner finally ran out of patience. Shi Tianyi's body was destroyed, but there was still a chance to possess him. If his soul and Yuanying were both destroyed, then he would be completely unsalvageable. Shi Tianyi could not die. Nothing could happen to the divine light of creation and the dual pupils. This was the bottom line of the Taishu Temple. Knocked back by the Void Banner, Shi Tianhao bellowed out, "Do you think you're the only one with a master?" He clapped his hands together, and light surged above his head. A colossal, majestic, greenish-black hall descended from the sky. The hall was extremely grand, as if it came from an ancient divine kingdom. It was unbelievably large. When it first appeared in the sky, it was almost as large as the Dragon Arena. Within the golden light, countless inscriptions and talismans constantly appeared, like the surging waves in the ocean of light. Tremendous power radiated out, enough to make people shiver. This was the sole arcane treasure that belonged to Lin Feng, the Kunpeng Hall. The Kunpeng Hall shuddered in the air and turned pitch black. It was as heavy as it could be, colliding against the Void Banner loudly. With a deafening boom, the white light of the Void Banner was directly smashed to pieces. Those who knew the origins of the Void Banner were all shocked, as the strongest aspect of the Void Banner was its defenses, but against the black Kunpeng Hall right now, it was basically like paper. Too powerful. A deep voice rang out from the Void Banner. It was afraid to clash head-on with the Kunpeng Hall anymore. It swept up Shi Tianyi and tore through space, fleeing rapidly. The Kunpeng Hall reacted extremely quickly. It shuddered again, and the pitch-black hall immediately turned completely green. Riding the atmospheric winds, it caught up to the Void Banner in the blink of an eye. The two arcane treasures collided again. This time, the Void Banner's defenses were not directly broken, but it was unable to break free either. In order to resist the Kunpeng Hall with all its might, it had no choice but to let go of Shi Tianyi. Otherwise, both the treasure and the person would be smashed to pieces by the Kunpeng Hall. Shi Tianhao stood on the roof of the Kunpeng Hall and stared coldly at Shi Tianyi. It's not yours in the end. Today, it's time to return what you stole from me to its rightful owner. The divine light of origin shot out, enveloping Shi Tianyi's entire body. Shi Tianhao formed a hand seal with both hands, and endless purple gas suddenly surged out of his body. Through the divine light of origin, it rushed into Shi Tianyi's body like a channel. In the next moment, a shocking scene appeared. There was light circulating within Shi Tianyi's body, and it was forcibly extracted by the purple gas. Through the divine light of origin, it returned to Shi Tianhao's body. Everyone instantly reacted. That's Shi Tian's divine light of end. Shi Tianhao is using a secret technique to take back this divine light. Shi Tianhao can't possibly have such a divine ability. It's that purple gas. That's the divine ability of the master of the Taoist gate. Everyone looked at Lin Feng on the stands. Lin Feng remained calm and said indifferently, "No one is allowed to interfere with today's battle." As he said that, Xianlin Taoist had already stood up. He extended his hand, and the white cloud immediately turned into a huge hand, reaching towards the rocks in the dragon arena. Nothing can happen to Shi Tian's life or the divine light of creation. Lin Feng swung his sleeve, and the vast purple gas blocked Xianlin Taoist's hand. On the other side, Quang Hung stood up too. He stared at Lin Feng. "Let go." With that, rings of white sound waves pushed towards Lin Feng. Lin Feng extended his hand, and as the waves surged, the vast green light turned into a boundless ocean, blocking Quang Hung with the boundless ocean. The dragon arena immediately fell into an uproar. Xianmin Tianzong and Taishu Temple were about to completely clash. Meanwhile, Shi Tianhao unleashed the Yu technique in the space below, firmly suppressing Shi Tian and extracting his divine light of creation. "Shi Tian, it's time for you to return the justice you owe me today." Shi Tian roared furiously. "You're dreaming." As he roared, his body collapsed loudly, turning into a sky full of blood-red light. He wanted to break through the imprisonment of Shi Tianhao's Yu technique. Chapter 586. With a furious roar, Shi Tian completely disintegrated his body, turning into a sky full of blood-red light. His spine had been broken by Shi Tianhao, and his body had been destroyed, but his foundations were still present. He shattered it with the technique of disintegration, erupting with startling power and breaking through Shi Tianhao's restraining power of the Yu formula. With that, Shi Tian's body was completely destroyed. Only the dual pupil in his right eye remained. He turned into a tiny speck of light and was about to flee. His soul and his yuaning were all attached to the dual pupil. Unfortunately, Shi Tian's efforts failed to break through Shi Tianhao's divine light of origin and violet qi. The divine light of end continued to be extracted. Shi Tianhao stood in the air. He was also covered in wounds and blood, and even his aura was extremely feeble, but he did not show any signs of weakness at all. His long, black hair draped over his shoulders, and the childishness on his face had completely vanished. Instead, he gave off a boundlessly domineering bearing, like a sovereign that had descended upon the world. "It's all over." Shi Tianhao stared at Shi Tian's soul and yuaning intently, surging with murderousness. Xianlin Taoist snorted coldly. His powers turned into a white cloud and reached towards them, but he was stopped by Lin Feng. "Today's battle is only between my disciple and that Shi Tian. No one is allowed to interfere. If anyone interferes, I'll cut off their claws." Lin Feng said indifferently. The silent Xian Li beside him immediately vanished from where she was. In the next moment, Xian Li appeared above the dragon arena. The sword case on her back opened loudly, and thousands of meters of vicious light rushed into the air, dyeing the entire sky of the ancient region of Sky Dragon a chilling, pale green color. Xianlin Taoist's expression changed slightly. Just when he wanted to say something, he saw Xian Li draw the heavens' punishing sword from the sword case on her back. A terrifying, devastating aura immediately radiated out. An extremely resplendent streak of light shot towards Xianlin Taoist. Xianlin Taoist's left eye lit up, and his magic treasure, the thousand-edged streamlight mirror, flew out. Countless beams of light refracted and instantly covered Xianlin Taoist within thousands of layers of space. These spaces were stacked on top of each other like mirrors, and in each mirror was the existence of Xianlin Taoist. Reality and illusion coexisted, and the changes were endless. But in front of the heaven-punishing sword, everything was in vain. Thousands of unpredictable space and time were destroyed like dried weeds, unable to stop the heaven-punishing sword in the slightest. In the thousand-prism flowing light mirror, an old man appeared and stood next to Xianlin Taoist. His expression was extremely solemn. The power of a peak Mayana grade artifact. It contains the aura of a creation artifact. I'm no match for it as a transformation grade artifact. Xianlin Taoist didn't say a word. He nodded and clasped his palms together to form a spell. Suddenly, boundless clouds surged. Amidst the white clouds, a huge city that was flashing with golden light rose from the ground and instantly took shape. The city walls on all four sides formed a huge city, and an extremely powerful force emerged from within. The powerful defensive power unexpectedly had a bit of the immortal dragon city's indestructible and eternal aura. The 9 heavens of the Great Void technique, the 6 heavens of the Great Void realm, the clear sky immortal city. The powerful defensive power of the clear sky immortal city, combined with the 1,000-prism flowing light mirror, finally withstood the terrifying heaven-punishing sword light. But before Xianlin Taoist could breathe a sigh of relief, the sword-wielding girl slashed out once again. This sword strike was even more ferocious than before, triggering the terrifying clear light of the entire world to pour down on Xianlin Taoist. The entire ancient sky dragon domain shook violently, as if it was about to be destroyed by this sword strike. The expressions of the people of the Great Qin dynasty changed slightly. Qin Emperor Stonefeather turned his palm and formed a spell to stabilize the ancient sky dragon domain. However, when Xianlin Taoist faced this even more terrifying second strike, he did not hesitate at all. He immediately powered the stone stairs in his right eye. The stone staircase quickly expanded and lifted up the vast outline heaven immortal city. Under the support of the stone stairs, the power of the clear sky immortal city strengthened, rising into the air like a true divine city of an immortal kingdom. It stood firmly under the bombardment of the heaven-punishing sword light. However, the spectators were all shocked. The mighty great elder of the Taishu Temple, a third-layer soul formation expert, Xianlin Taoist, was suppressed to the point where he could only defend passively by an arcane treasure that had not even reached creation grade. This was truly a shocking sight. At the same time, Lin Feng and Quang Heng stood up at the same time on the eastern and western terraces of the Dragon Arena. When the two of them stood up, the entire Dragon Arena began to tremble. Apart from a northern terrace where the Qin Emperor, Stonefeather, watched over and remained stable, the other soul form experts could not even stop the shaking from the terraces in the valley below them. They seemed like two slumbering, primordial gods had awakened together, opened their eyes, and stood up. Although he seemed like a child, Quang Heng's gaze was calm and experienced. You want to kill them all? Those who kill will always be killed by others, Lin Feng said indifferently. Quang Heng nodded and said nothing more. In the next moment, he brought his palms together, and a grand pillar of light immediately appeared, piercing through the surroundings like a pillar that held up the sky. The Grand Demon Suppression Array. The Grand Demon Suppression Array in Quang Heng's hands was completely different from Shi Tianyi's. It truly was like a glorious pillar that pierced through the sky, pierced through the past, pierced through creation. Although it did not destroy the ancient sky dragon region, the two ends of the pillar of light directly pierced through the power of the region in this miniature world. That was not all. From the hole in space, one could vaguely see the white pillar of light passing through countless worlds, flowing through space like a heavenly river. The Grand Demon Suppression Array pressed down on Lin Feng. Lin Feng ignored it indifferently, raised his right hand, and pointed his index and middle fingers straight to the sky. Suddenly, a terrifying sword that could destroy the world was revealed. At the fingertips of his right hand, a black and a white magical power was constantly circling, turning into a yin and yang Tai Chi pattern. In the center of the Tai Chi pattern, a gray sword tip slowly rose from it, bringing with it a power that made the world tremble. Heaven-punishing sword chi. Lin Feng waved his hand, and the gray sword chi rushed out, turning the void into chaos wherever it passed. Boom! With a loud noise, the pillar-like Grand Demon Suppression Array was directly severed by Lin Feng's sword. The terrifying, imposing manner was like a real pillar of heaven had been severed, and the world was collapsing with it. Kuang Heng's eyes flickered, and the brilliance in his eyes gradually calmed down until it became almost deathly still. As his gaze changed, his magical power and aura also gradually faded into nothingness. His hands changed signs, and boundless clouds surged. A shining, golden four-sided city rose from it, protecting him in the middle. Using outline sky, celestial city, to block Lin Feng's terrifying heaven-punishing sword chi, Kuang Heng's hands did not stop, and faint clouds surged out one after another, intertwining in the void. The clouds intertwined and shrouded Lin Feng's head. The white clouds quickly turned golden, and rumbling thunder could be heard from within. The golden lightning kept surging in the clouds, and there were even a few thick lightning dragons poking their heads out of the clouds. They were not the manifestation of ordinary lightning essence, but like real life with spirituality. Fifth heaven of the Great Void Realm, Heavenly Cloud Dragon Lightning Manipulation Technique. Kuang Heng used Outline Sky Celestial City to defend, and then pointed his finger at Lin Feng. The lightning in the golden clouds turned into thousands of lightning dragons, crashing down on Lin Feng. Lin Feng's expression did not change at all, and he did not even retract his heaven-punishing sword chi. His left hand formed a seal, and the void instantly shattered. Endless, surging earth, water, fire, and wind churned everything into chaos. In an instant, the earth, water, fire, and wind returned to their positions, becoming balanced, and a bubble-like thing appeared in the void turbulence. Lin Feng stretched out his left hand and tapped the bubble lightly. The bubble immediately burst, and two streams of air, one clear and one turbid, rushed out. A powerful artistic conception that could split the heavens and the earth manifested from within. Primordial Heaven Opening Technique. The Tai Chi pattern on Lin Feng's forehead appeared, and it kept spinning. His magical power surged, and the power that re-established the universe and opened up the creation of heaven and earth directly shattered the thousands of lightning dragons. It was as if it was facing the suppression of a world. Even the golden thunder clouds shook as if they would shatter at any time. Just as Lin Feng and Kuang Heng were fighting, Shi Tianhao had already caught up with Shi Tianyi, who was preparing to escape. He activated the Ian formula and instantly fixed his opponent's divine soul. Then he directly punched it fiercely. Shi Tianyi's divine soul condensed into a physical body. He had lost his right arm, and now he was hit by Shi Tianhao's vigorous martial arts. His divine soul was like a broken porcelain, full of cracks. The shadow of death rose in Shi Tianyi's heart. It shouldn't be like this. I was born with dual pupils, and I am a god. I am not inferior to anyone. Even if you were born with a supreme foundation, I am not inferior to you. From the moment you schemed to steal my supreme foundation, in your heart, you have already admitted defeat. Today, you have only yourself to blame. Shi Tianhao said coldly. It's not that I don't want revenge, it's that the time has not come. There is justice in the world. If there is no justice, then I will fight for justice. Now the time has come. Shi Tianyi roared furiously. His Yuan Ying began to burn by itself, and the powerful essence of his power was all supplied to his dual pupils. He was really going to risk his life now. Shi Tianyi's soul was channeled into the dual pupils too. The dual pupils that had originally dimmed slightly due to overexertion immediately lit up. I, Shi Tianyi, have never been weaker than anyone in my entire life. Rays of divine light filled the surroundings once again. Countless profound glyphs and characters surged out. Die. Before the dual pupils could unleash their might again, Shi Tianhao lunged over. With a palm strike, He directly made the dual pupils erupt with a rain of light. Shi Tianyi's soul and Yuaning were forcefully jolted out. At this moment, two strands of power, one black and one white, rushed into the dragon arena. While Lin Feng was busy with Kuang Heng, he had rushed over to take action and save Shi Tianyi. In the air, Lin Feng's eyes turned cold. Piss off. There was no need for him to do anything. In the distance, Xian Li, who had forced the Xianlin Taoist to the point where he could not fight back, directly turned around and swung her sword. Vicious, clear light cleaved through the surroundings, directly shattering Dao Venerable Cloud Zun's protective powers. Dao Venerable Cloud Zun was shocked. A long, snow-white piece of silk flew out from his sleeve. The silk flickered, and a woman in palace attire appeared. A second layer soul formation cultivator and a transformation-grade arcane treasure worked together. The yin and yang qi turned into two balls of light, one black and one white, constantly revolving and whittling away at the light of the heaven-punishing sword. However, it was useless. With a flash, the light of the heaven-punishing sword immediately destroyed the black and white ball of light. Afterwards, it cut through the snow-white silk, but at the same time, snow-white flames drifted through the dragon arena. The sect master of the Heavenly Pool sect, Chao Wei, who had always kept a low profile, actually took action at this moment as well. His target was Shi Tianhao. The situation in the dragon arena became more and more chaotic. Chapter 587. The tremendous amount of ice flames surged towards Shi Tianhao in the dragon arena like the tide. However, Chao Wei planned on taking advantage of the situation. Lin Feng glanced at him indifferently, but it made Chao Wei feel like he had fallen into a cavern of ice. In the next moment, a treasured light lit up above Lin Feng's head. A melodious bell rang out in the air. A great bell tore through space and descended upon the world. The bell rang out, but Chao Wei's ice flames vanished completely. The bell of creation. The image of the bell gradually changed, turning into a huge, pitch-black stone door. Its surface was covered in carvings of thousands of scenes. Within its ancient desolation, it radiated with a heavy aura of life. Within the endless chimes, the stone door radiated with heavy, exuberant life force. This was the first transformation of the bell of creation, the gate of life creation. It represented the birth of endless life and the creation of endless things. It possessed the great power to open up a region of fortune and create a world. With a rumble, the heavy stone door slowly opened to the two sides. Everyone held their breaths. Even the eyes of Kuang Heng, Xianlin Taoist, and the Qin Emperor stone-feathered and narrowed slightly, staring at the gate of life creation that opened slowly in the air. With their cultivation, they could vaguely sense the power and concept of this arcane treasure. It was of the same origin as Lin Feng himself. This was Lin Feng's life-bound arcane treasure. The door opened, and a figure flickered within the gentle light. Afterwards, a person flew out, directly targeting Chao Wei. This is a Vitality Taoist soldier. Chao Wei was taken aback before his expression changed drastically. The art of nurturing Dao soldiers was not rare. It used a special formation to connect many disciples who cultivated the same Dao technique into one. As long as the number of disciples with low cultivation was enough, with the help of the formation, they would be able to defend against enemies whose cultivation was much higher than theirs. But there were fewer of them. Some sects in the Divine Land would even nurture demons, passing down human Taoist methods and turning them into Taoist soldiers. The divine martial army of the great Zhou Empire was renowned throughout the world. The divine martial immortal extermination formation could merge the powers of thousands of cultivators who practiced different Taoist methods. It was also a method of improving Taoist soldiers. But at the end of the day, Taoist soldiers were for defeating the few with numbers, defeating the strong with the weak, exchanging quantity for quality. From a certain perspective, it was also a variant of formations. Chao Wei's Skypon sect had such a technique. However, Dao soldiers were all living beings with intelligence. There had never been a Dao soldier formed from essence Qi. This was because essence Qi Dao soldiers could only be condensed by a magic treasure's essence spirit. However, it could only reach the level of Yuanying. By accumulating and nurturing a sufficient number of Dao soldiers and forming a formation, one could indeed obtain great power. However, compared to Dharma treasures that had essence soul level power, the gains did not make up for the losses. With so much vital Qi, it was better to use it to strengthen one's body. But now, not only Chao Wei, everyone who saw the Yuan Qi Dao soldier was dumbfounded. The essence Qi Dao soldier's body was half black and half white. It looked strange, but it was very coordinated. Its facial features were gentle, but it was expressionless. This was not the main point. The main point was that the dermic power around the vital Qi Dao soldier was circulating. It had actually reached the realm of being one with the world. It was shockingly a primordial spirit level power cultivation, a primordial divinity level essence Qi Dao soldier. Illusion? Or was there a treasure in it? Everyone present, including Kuang Heng, Xinlin Taoist, and Stonefeather, the three primordial spirit Dao integration realm experts, were all shocked. Lin Feng's bell of creation had manifested the first manifestation, the gate of life. It contained almost endless life force. When used for treatment, it had the miraculous effect of reviving the dead and growing flesh and bones. With this treasure protecting him, Lin Feng was impervious to all evils. Even if he was injured, he could recover instantly. However, this treasure was not only a protective treasure, but also a powerful weapon in battle. The reason was because of the Taiji Dao soldier that was nurtured in the self-created gate of life. It transformed one's vast life force into actual combat power. To other Dharma treasures, it was a technique that did not make up for the losses. However, to the gate of life, it was just right. Just as everyone was shocked, the black and white Taiji Dao soldier had already arrived in front of Chao Wei. With a punch, it was Lin Feng's great sun divine fist. The dazzling golden light transformed into boundless flames, forcing Chao Wei to focus all his attention to deal with it. Seeing this scene, everyone gasped. It really is an essence Qi Dao soldier at the first stage of the primordial spirit realm. This was a primordial spirit Dao soldier that had never appeared in the divine land. When they thought of the terrifying scene of such a Dao soldier accumulating, everyone shuddered. Everyone looked at the gate of life in the void. What kind of Dharma treasure is this? This Dao soldier is lacking. It is not equivalent to a real primordial spirit realm cultivator. Wu Qingru, the minister of Great Qin who had been silent all this while, suddenly said, "It is formed from pure essence Qi and gives birth to spiritual awareness." It is equivalent to the combination of a Dharma treasure's essence spirit and a cultivator's divine power Dharma body. Far away from the Dharma treasure that gave birth to it, or if it is not replenished by the Dharma treasure's power for a certain period of time, its spirituality and essence Qi will gradually be obliterated. Moreover, its power is far inferior to the master of Xian Min's divine power Dharma body. Emperor Qin Stonefeather said silently, "However, I can feel that the master of Xian Min's Dharma treasure is only at the spirit nurturing level. It has endless potential to be unearthed. If its power continues to increase, it is hard to say how strong this Dao soldier is." Wu Qingru nodded and sighed. A rare bitter smile appeared on his face. Moreover, Dao soldiers have always won through numbers. Before he finished speaking, another Taiji Dao soldier rushed out of the gate of life and pounced at Chao Wei. Chao Wei's left hand formed a strange seal. The index and middle fingers of his right hand formed a sword and pointed at the center of his brows. As he opened and closed his left hand's fingers, it was as if frost was condensed and flames were flying. It was a perfect combination of movement and stillness. After his right hand touched the center of his brows, endless frost froze his entire body. It was as if he had transformed into an ancient iceberg. In the next moment, the top of the iceberg shattered. Like a volcano eruption, endless flames and magma spewed out from the top of the mountain. The iceberg evaporated continuously while the flames danced in the air. Both of them rapidly turned into two streams of smoke, one red and one blue. Following that, the two streams of smoke merged into one and disappeared in the air as if they had vanished into thin air. Ice and fire invisible sword chi. Chao Wei's self-created ultimate technique was ferocious and awe-inspiring at this moment, forcing back the Taiji Dao soldier in front of him. However, before he could rejoice, the other Taiji Dao soldier pounced on him. Rise! Chao Wei did not dare to hesitate. With a flick of his hand, an ethereal and unpredictable ice mist appeared and floated in his palm. Like mist and illusion, it flashed with a dazzling cold sword light. It was a treasured Dharma treasure of the Heavenly Pool sect. It was called the Ice Soul Misty Cloud. It was a mystical Dharma sword. Its body constantly changed between the two forms of ice crystal and water mist. It was mysterious and unpredictable. Chao Wei was only at the first tier of the primordial soul realm when he controlled this transformation gray Dharma treasure. Although he was unable to unleash its full power, it was still shockingly powerful. Combined with his ice and fire invisible sword chi, it swept in all directions. However, the two Taiji Dao soldiers were expressionless. They attacked Chao Wei from the front and back. The Great Sun Divine Fist and the Boundless Sea Art were two great divine powers. The two Dao soldiers each cast one of them, instantly putting Chao Wei in a perilous situation. One of the Taiji Dao soldiers executed the Boundless Sea Art. His body turned into a boundless blue sea and forcefully received Chao Wei's sword. In the next moment, a formless sword chi of ice and fire, which was completely similar to the concept of power, attacked Chao Wei. Chao Wei was instantly angered to the point of vomiting blood. A hole opened up in the void, flickering with violent red light. Raging lava gushed out from within, and a formidable-looking red-haired elder stepped out. Snow-white ice flames appeared, and then they quickly turned into scarlet flames. Under the burning flames, the Taiji Dao soldiers' boundless blue sea evaporated almost instantly. On the other side of the void, a crack appeared as a white-haired elder with a grave and indifferent expression walked out. However, he did not care about the Taiji Dao soldier. His target was still Shi Tianhao. Seeing these two elders, all the primordial soul realm mighty figures present raised their brows. The ice and fire elders actually came out together. Shi Zhongyue took a closer look. They came out of seclusion in advance. They gave up 1,000 years of hard work in the end and failed to attain the primordial soul integration stage. What a pity, what a pity. But what secret does Shi Tianhao have to make them make such a huge sacrifice? These two elders were the grand elders of the Heavenly Pool sect and the uncle masters of sect leader Chao Wei. They were known as the Ice and Fire Elders. Although the two of them had yet to attain the Dao integration stage, they had already reached the Void Return Pinnacle stage. Their power was extremely terrifying. After Elder Huo appeared, he swept up the sky-scorching flames and pushed the Heavenly Pool sect's ice and fire intent realm to the extreme. He completely gave up on the power of ice and unleashed the power of fire to the extreme. The two first-stage primordial soul realm Taiji Dao soldiers were no match for him at all. However, at that moment, another two Taiji Dao soldiers rushed out of the gate of life creation. They were also first-stage primordial soul realm cultivators. Everyone present had solemn expressions. Other than sect leader Lin Feng, there were very few primordial soul realm cultivators in Xianmen Tianzong. Many people thought that as long as they held back Lin Feng, Xianmen Tianzong would be helpless against the attacks of the primordial soul realm cultivators from the other factions. That was the idea that the Heavenly Pool sect had. However, no one expected that Lin Feng's intrinsic Dharma treasure would be so heaven-defying that it could actually evolve into primordial soul realm Dao soldiers. In that case, Shinmen Tianzong did not lack primordial soul realm combat power at all. Although they were only first-stage primordial soul realm cultivators and seemed powerless against Elder Hua, who was at the second-stage primordial soul realm, how could there be so many second-stage primordial soul realm cultivators? Moreover, who knew how many Taiji Dao soldiers the gate of life creation could nurture? At that moment, the 4 Taiji Dao soldiers were spread out in 4 different directions. They were like brothers and sisters, interacting with each other and forming a simple array formation. Everyone's spirits were lifted. So-called Dao soldiers had to form a formation to fight the enemy in order to unleash their power. The Great Sun Divine Fist, Infinite Sea Art, Time Light Divine Wind, and Heaven-Bearing Seal were unleashed separately. The earth, water, fire, and wind surged together, directly shattering the void. The next moment, the chaos stabilized once again. The power of creation and heaven opening was formed. A bubble appeared in front of Elder Hua and Chao Wei. Even Elder Bing, who was rushing towards Shi Tianhao, was blocked. The expressions of the 3 primordial soul realm experts of the Heavenly Pool sect changed. Not long ago, they had just seen Lin Feng personally use this terrifying Dharma spell. It was a powerful might that stood in the universe, split the heavens and earth, and opened up a world of creation. Primordial Heaven Opening Technique. Chapter 588. The formation of the Dao soldiers greatly increased their strength. Although there were only 4 Taiji Dao soldiers, their formation was not to be underestimated. If that was all, Elder Ice and Elder Fire would not be too afraid. After all, there was a huge difference between the first and second primordial spirit realm. The gap was difficult to cross. The profoundness of the return to void body was not something that could be compared with the power of the primordial spirit incarnations. However, the 4 Taiji Dao soldiers working together to unleash a mighty divine power, like the primordial heaven opening technique, immediately made Elder Ice and Elder Fire feel pressured. It was like the creation of an area and the crushing power of the world. Even with their divine powers and dermic powers, it was very difficult to deal with. Elder Ice stopped in his tracks, not daring to get distracted to find trouble with Shi Tianhao. He said to Chao Wei in a deep voice, "Give me the ice soul misty cloud." Without another word, Chao Wei handed the Dharma treasure in his hand to Elder Ice. Elder Ice's Dao realm was the exact opposite of Elder Fire's. He completely gave up on the power of fire and unleashed the power of ice to the extreme. In the entire Heavenly Pool sect, he could unleash the power of this incarnation-level Dharma treasure to the extreme. When the 2 of them worked together, they could even surpass their own limits. He gripped the ice soul misty cloud, and a woman with a cold expression appeared in the icy mist-like sword gleam. She was the sword spirit of the ice soul misty cloud. Elder Ice and the sword spirit exerted their strength together, and a blizzard instantly erupted, turning the world into a world of ice and snow. In the misty world of ice and snow, the bubble formed by the primordial heaven opening technique was constantly suppressed, trying to prevent the bubble from bursting and freeze it. However, the power of the primordial heaven opening technique was extremely powerful. When the bubble burst, clear and turbid chi surged, dividing the world of ice and snow. Chao Wei and Elder Ice and Elder Fire's expressions changed drastically. Although this primordial heaven opening technique was not as powerful as when Lin Feng used it, it was still thrilling. "Treasure, please show yourself." In an instant, Elder Ice and Elder Fire formed hand seals at the same time and stretched out a finger, pointing at each other's glabella. After pointing at each other's glabella, their fingers retreated at lightning speed, dragging out a thin line from their fingertips. 2 thin lines, one blue and one red, spiraled together and shot up into the sky, tearing open the void above. A terrifying aura immediately came from a void, and at the same time, a deep voice said, "Is there a need for this?" All of a sudden, the people of the ancient Sky Dragon domain all felt a powerful aura, which was in no way inferior to primordial spirit Tao integration experts like Kuang Heng, Lord Xianlin, and Emperor Qin Shiryu. A white-robed, middle-aged man slowly walked out of the broken space. He had a head of fiery red hair and a pair of sword-like eyebrows that were snow-white like frost. Qin Emperor Stonefeather and Wu Qingru looked at each other. It's the two poles sky peaks. The bipolar sky peak was the true treasure of the Celestial Lake sect. Tens of thousands of years ago, it was a strange mountain in the Celestial Lake of the northern frontier. Its entire body was made of extremely cold ice crystals, but the core of the mountain contained blazing lava. After the founding ancestor of the Celestial Lake sect found it, he used a secret technique to refine it into a magic treasure. After being refined by generations of powerful beings in the Celestial Lake sect, as well as his own cultivation, it finally became a Mahayana-grade magic treasure. The magic treasure had advanced to the third realm, reaching the Mahayana grade, and the origin spirit was completely developed. It could separate from the body and control the body independently. It could exert all of its power and move freely. The combat power of a Mahayana-grade magic treasure was completely equivalent to that of a third-tier primordial spirit cultivator of the Tao integration stage. The red-haired, white-browed, middle-aged man who appeared in front of everyone was the magic treasure spirit of the bipolar sky peak. He was the strongest person in the Celestial Lake sect and had always been guarding the mountain gate of the Celestial Lake sect, not going out easily. This time, he was persuaded by the Ice and Fire Elders and Chao Wei, and finally came to West Hill City. Seeing that the primordial heaven opening technique was extremely powerful, and that it was blasting toward Chao Wei and the others with destructive power, he finally could not sit still anymore. The middle-aged man raised his white brows and raised his palm to the sky. The space opened up, and a towering mountain of thousands of feet high appeared above everyone's head. The huge size of the mountain made an extremely strong visual impact. Its entire body was snow-white, like ice crystals, exuding a biting cold air. Within the ice crystal-like snow mountain, one could faintly see a red flame jumping fiercely. Hot steam rose from the top of the mountain, and thick smoke billowed. Endless scorching flames and lava spewed out from it. The middle-aged man did not say much. He raised the towering bipolar sky peak with one hand and smashed it directly toward the clear and turbid air that rushed out after the bubble of the primordial heaven opening technique burst. The clear and turbid air carried a powerful force that could split heaven and earth apart and bombarded the bipolar sky peak. The bipolar sky peak suddenly changed, and the space where the mountain was also transformed into a world of its own. Ice and fire intertwined. The blazing fire actually incessantly burned the clear air, while the ice and snow continuously cleansed the turbid air. The two worked together to suppress the clear and turbid air back to its original chaotic state. The towering mountain kept falling, try to reverse the opening of heaven and earth, and stop the changes of the primordial world. Such power and might made everyone gasp in amazement. The four Taiji Dao soldiers naturally could not compare to Lin Feng's own magic power. Although the primordial heaven opening technique was extremely exquisite, it was about to be reversed under the suppression of the bipolar sky peak. However, at this moment, the figure in the life creation gate flashed again. One, another, the third, and even more. In the blink of an eye, another 8 Taiji Dao soldiers rushed out of the life creation gate. These 8 Taiji Dao soldiers did not split into 2 groups, with 4 people in each group forming a formation again. Instead, the 8 of them combined to form a formation. Heaven, earth, wind, thunder, water, fire, mountain, swamp. The 8 Taiji Dao soldiers stood in the positions of the 8 trigrams and formed a formation. Their magic power and vital chi connected as one, instantly displaying the creation of the universe and the scenes of all living things. Powerful energy continuously poured into the bodies of the 4 Tao soldiers, 4 at the front and 8 at the back. The formation of the 12 Tao soldiers gradually merged. The power of the entire formation increased with a bang, and the power of the primordial heaven opening technique also increased at the same time. The clear and turbid air separated once again, splitting the chaos with an unstoppable force, giving birth to creation. The turbid air sank, becoming stable and condensed, condensing into a substance, turning into the earth, then into mountains and rivers. The clear air rose, vast and mysterious, turning into the sky, then into the stars, the sun, and the moon. The earth, water, fire, and wind were re-established, and the creation of heaven and earth was created. Under the bombardment of such domineering power, the 2 poles sky peak suddenly trembled violently, swaying as if it was about to collapse. The middle-aged man with red hair and white eyebrows had a change of expression, and he shouted, "Go!" His figure instantly moved to the top of the 2 poles sky peak, stabilizing his body. Elder Ice and Elder Fire's faces were filled with shock. They knew that the critical moment had arrived. Without saying a word, they pounced on the 2 poles sky peak together, turned into a blue light and a red light, and fused into the magic treasures. Chao Wei looked deeply at Lin Feng, who was still fighting with Kuang Hung in the distance. There, Lin Feng did not even look over. Huff! Chao Wei took a breath and revealed his primordial spirit incarnation, turning into a blue sun that flashed with cold light. It was dazzling, but it made people shudder. His primordial spirit incarnation also attached to the 2 poles sky peak, and the power of the heavenly pool sex powerhouses was concentrated on this great vehicle grade magic treasure. The surface of the 2 poles sky peak flickered alternately with red and blue light, and the size of the mountain kept expanding, rising to a height of more than 3,000 feet, hanging in the sky, blocking out the sun, and suppressing the primordial heaven opening technique that the 12 Tai Chi Dao soldiers had formed in a formation below. However, most of the people present did not pay attention to them. Instead, their eyes were on the black gate on the other side. Inside the gate of life creation, there were faint figures flashing. Although they did not step out of the gate of life creation, it was enough to shock everyone. Damn, this is called a spirit-nurturing grade magic treasure? Although it was possible for magic treasures below the creation level to defeat a great vehicle-grade magic treasure, that was mostly a case of a spirit-nurturing challenging an incarnation, and an incarnation challenging a great vehicle. It was not unheard of for a spirit-nurturing grade magic treasure to contend against a great vehicle-grade magic treasure, but to suppress the 2 poles sky peak like the gate of life creation was definitely unusual. In the distance, Xian Li was even more domineering. A fierce clear light directly sliced off a corner of Xianlin Taoist's outlined sky, immortal city. Xian Li's face was expressionless, and her sword momentum did not stop. As the sword light soared, it became more and more mournful. The entire ancient sky dragon domain was shaking, and everything was at the tip of the blade, pressing down on Xianlin Taoist. I can't display it here. Let's change places. Xianlin Taoist's expression did not change. The stone stairs under his feet suddenly flew up, broke through space, and directly left the ancient sky dragon domain world, escaping into the endless void. In the dark universe, the stars dotted the sky. Xianlin Taoist stopped and turned around, calmly looking at Xian Li, who was chasing after him. In Xianlin Taoist's eyes, all emotions had returned to calmness, as if all things had died and returned to their original state. His robe fluttered, as if he had merged with the entire void universe. In a flash, his body became incredibly huge, as if he himself was a world of creation. As Xianlin Taoist clapped his hands, endless white clouds gathered in his palms. Rings of white halos appeared, stirring the layers of the void of the universe. Layers of space overlapped, but the white halos did not distort or change shape, as if they were a power that no disaster or tribulation could destroy. The halos constantly gathered and superimposed and finally turned into a strange ball of light, like a fruit. Countless great Tao runes emerged from the fruit, shaking all things in the world and revealing a grand concept of power. There was no sadness, no joy, no anger, no resentment, and no emotion. It was indifferent to everything, yet controlled everything and dominated everything. Qin Emperor Stonefeather stayed in the ancient sky dragon domain and did not follow them out, but his gaze passed through the layers of the void, silently watching this scene. This is Xianlin Taoist Tao fruit. Tao, the principle of heaven and earth. Fruit, the result of a cultivator's cultivation of the great Tao. Tao, fruit, a powerful power that only cultivators in the third layer of the primordial spirit realm, the Tao integration stage, could possess. The Tao integration stage was the Tao fruit, transcending the world and comprehending the supreme great Tao. Xianlin Taoist unfolded his Tao fruit, and the majestic power suddenly shook the void. At the same time, Lin Feng and Kuang Heng also left the ancient sky dragon domain and came to the endless void. Kuang Heng's eyes were calm as he looked at Lin Feng. He also clapped his hands together, and an even more powerful fruit of the way appeared in front of him. It was profound and vast, and the power of the great Tao was condensed and did not dissipate. Lin Feng's expression was indifferent as the taiji pattern between his eyebrows spun rapidly. Chapter 589. Xian Li's sword broke one of Tao Master Yunzhan's transmogrification grade magic treasures, forcing the second-tier primordial divinity realm expert to retreat. The bell of creation turned into the life creation gate and the Taiji Tao soldiers, which formed a formation to suppress the people of the Celestial Pool sect. Everything happened in the blink of an eye, and during this time, Shi Tianhao's divine light of origin, with the help of Lin Feng's purple qi, had completely extracted Shi Tianyi's divine light of termination. The two divine lights flowed together in his golden elixir, connected from head to tail, and the starting and ending points blurred together. Although it was the original owner of the divine light of termination, it would still take time to completely refine it and turn it back into his own. Shi Tianhao was not in a hurry. He only held Shi Tianyi's remaining double pupil in his palm. Shi Tianyi's divine soul and Yuanying had been shaken out of the double pupil, and he stared at Shi Tianhao. Reason told him that he had to escape immediately. Otherwise, both his divine soul and Yuanying would be destroyed, and he would really die without a burial place. However, at this moment, not only the divine light of creation, but even the double pupil had fallen into Shi Tianhao's hands. The gap between his dreams and reality was too big, and it made him furious. Shi Tianhao clenched his fist, and the double pupil suddenly burst into a dazzling light, but there was a feeling that it was at the end of the road. The double pupil was connected to Shi Tianyi's mind, and his own divine soul groaned as if it was being pricked by needles. "It's over," Shi Tianhao said slowly, and with a leap, he rushed in front of Shi Tianyi once again. Shi Tianyi roared, "I'm not willing. I'm not any worse than you." As he roared, his Yuanying suddenly shrank and turned into a ball of light. As it shrank, the surrounding void collapsed, collapsing toward the center of the ball of light. The next moment, the ball of light expanded and cracks appeared on it. Dazzling white light shot out from it, emitting terrifying waves of power. Shi Tianyi actually wanted to self-destruct his Yuanying in order to perish together with Shi Tianhao. You only have yourself to blame. You can't blame anyone else. Shi Tianhao held the dual pupils in one hand and raised his other hand into a fist. "You!" The time symbol was activated, directly freezing Shi Tianyi's divine soul and Yuanying. The collapsing white ball of light stagnated in space. Time seemed to be frozen, and the dynamic picture became static. In the next moment, the stone sword reappeared in Shi Tianhao's hand. He swung the sword and pierced through the white ball of light and Shi Tianyi's divine soul, nailing them together. A look of despair appeared in Shi Tianyi's eyes. The power of Shi Tianhao's Ian character art was removed, and the white ball of light suddenly exploded, swallowing Shi Tianyi's divine soul. The violent energy exploded, and everything was reduced to nothingness. In the distance, Kuang Heng saw this scene and rushed over, but Lin Feng was one step ahead of him. With a flick of his sleeve, clouds of purple chi spread out, directly sweeping away the space where the two of them were. Then, he and Kuang Heng rushed out of the ancient sky dragon domain one after the other, into the endless void where Xian Li and Xianlin Taoist had already rushed out. In the ancient sky dragon domain, most of the people had not even reacted at this time, immersed in the shocking scene just now. They looked at each other, feeling a little disbelief. Big Stone was defeated just like that. He was defeated so thoroughly that even Yuan Ying's self-destruction could do nothing to Little Stone. Yuan Ying's self-destruction, his divine soul and physical body were completely destroyed, and he can't be more dead. I can't believe that the dual pupils person who cultivated the 9 heavens of Taishu technique possesses the divine light of creation and is already at the early Yuanying realm would lose to Shi Tianhao, who is at the late golden elixir realm. Big Stone is strong enough. He is indeed worthy of the title of Heaven's Prideling. There is only one reason why he lost, and that is that Xianmin Tianzong's Little Stone is stronger. Speaking of Xianmin Tianzong, everyone gazed at the hole in space above the ancient sky dragon domain. On the eastern terrace of the dragon arena, Xianmin Tianzong's camp was already empty. They had all been swept away by Lin Feng earlier. None of the soul form powerhouses could sit still any longer. They all rushed out of the ancient sky dragon domain through the hole, wanting to personally witness the unprecedented battle that was about to take place. It would be a battle even more shocking than the battle between the two stones. In the endless void, Kuang Heng and Xianlin Taoist had already revealed their fruits of ways. Their great power shook up the surroundings. Lin Feng looked at Kuang Heng before him calmly, and Kuang Heng's expression was just as indifferent. The fruit of ways in front of him flowed with light, and countless talismans and characters surged out. The light of these talismans meandered through the pitch-black, tranquil universe like a long river. A powerful conception of power, where the dead were like old people, was manifested from within. The flow of time could not be stopped. The fruit of great light was the fruit of the ways of the world that Kuang Heng had obtained from the void returning stage and unification stage. The river of time flowed into Kuang Heng's immortal city of outline heaven, and Lin Feng's heaven-crushing sword Qi attacked again. When it came into contact with the immortal city of outline heaven, the final result was actually the sword Qi that collapsed first. The heaven-crushing sword Qi that could annihilate everything had actually collapsed. Lin Feng's gaze flickered slightly. Aging, Kuang Heng's immortal city of outline heaven had fused with the power of the fruit of great light. It contained the unstoppable conception of the passage of time and the aging of all things. Everything in the world, whether they were alive or not, could not defeat the flow of time. Who could grasp true eternity? On the other side, Xianlin Taoist had also poured the power of his fruit of ways into the immortal city of outline heaven. His immortal city of outline heaven actually shattered before Xian Li's heaven-crushing sword could reach it. However, the shattering erupted with an extremely terrifying power, as if the world had fallen silent. That terrifying power made everyone raise their eyebrows. It was as if the scene of the cloudy forest realm's dimensional realm being annihilated was replayed. All the essence Qi went berserk, the power of boundaries collapsed, and the boundaries of the universe became blurry. The massive, distorted power stirred up the starry sky of the universe. Xianlin Taoist Tao fruit, the fruit of great nirvana. It was the complete Tao of destruction, and its instantaneous explosive power was even more terrifying than Kuang Heng's fruit of great light. This explosion seemed to want to shatter the universe. Even a third-level primordial soul realm Tao integration expert would not dare to take the risk easily. The group of essence soul realm powerhouses that had escaped into the void distanced themselves, afraid that they would be implicated. Such a terrifying force was enough to kill a first firmament essence soul realm cultivator, much less if it was directed at them. Only Xian Li was expressionless. She raised the heaven-crushing sword in her hand and pointed it above her head. At the next moment, the sword slashed down. The boundless clear light gathered in a single line. As the line slid down, the void of the universe trembled. It was as if a canvas had been neatly cut in half from the middle. The turbulence caused by the explosion of the Xianlin Taoists' outlined heaven immortal city was also severed by the clear light. As if its life had been slashed, the terrifying turbulence instantly lost its vitality. It was like a dying person who fell to the side of the road. The scene that seemed to have a strong start and a weak finish had shocked everyone. Xian Li's sword was too terrifying. Xianlin Taoist's attack earlier was equivalent to a great calamity that could destroy a small world, but it had been obliterated by a single sword. Even if it's a Mahaya-grade Dharma treasure, this power is too shocking, Xianlin Taoist stared at Xianli and thought. But it's not a creation Dharma treasure. While these thoughts flashed through his mind, he did not slow down at all. He put his palms together and said in a deep voice, "Supreme Drum Immortal, please show yourself." Boom, 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 boom. A series of earth-shattering explosions rang out. With each explosion, it was as if a primordial universe had been broken and turned into a primordial creation. White light surged in the void and spread out like a tide. Within the white light, a giant drum appeared. The Supreme Formation Breaking Drum. Together with the void yin-yang bell, they were known as the two Taishu treasures. They were the two strongest Dharma treasures in the Taishu temple apart from the creation Dharma treasure, the Haotian mirror. At the same time, they were recognized by the entire great heaven primordial world as the two strongest Dharma treasures below the creation level. Beside the giant drum stood an old man with white hair and a youthful complexion. He was tall and strong, and although his face was old, he looked powerful. The old man's name was Supreme Drum Immortal, and he was the primordial spirit of the Supreme Formation Breaking Drum. After he appeared, he did not say anything. Two drumsticks appeared in his hands, and he turned around and started beating the drum rhythmically. The drum beat sounded like the beginning of a primordial world, and circles of dazzling white light spread out. The Supreme Formation Breaking Drum was known as the nemesis of all Dharma arrays in the world. However, other than restraining Dharma arrays, it was also known for other Dharma powers. Every beat of the drum shook the sky. Silently, Lin Feng looked at the giant drum. He had heard of the Supreme Formation Breaking Drum for a long time, but today was the first time he had seen this treasure. The two Taishu treasures live up to their reputation. Lin Feng smiled. A light spot flew out from between his brows, and it quickly turned into a giant Dharma array. It was the yin and yang life and death array. Upon contact with the drum beat of the Supreme Formation Breaking Drum, the yin and yang life and death array began to shake. Many changes occurred within the Dharma array as it fought against the Supreme Formation Breaking Drum. This Dharma array of yours is extraordinary. Kuang Heng looked at the scene calmly. He raised his palm up high, and the river of time flowed between his fingers silently. His body suddenly moved, and he was already in front of Lin Feng, and he slammed his palm down. The fourth heaven of Taishu, changing heaven divine hand of the universe, the strongest martial arts Dharma of the Taishu temple. In an instant, it was as if the sky had collapsed, crashing towards Lin Feng. Lin Feng did not care about it all. With the 8 trigrams sky crashing hammer, he collapsed the creation in all directions. The 8 trigrams images transformed and shattered endlessly, activating endless power to clash with Kuang Heng's changing heaven divine hand of the universe. The chi of the void within thousands of miles collapsed, and it was compressed into a vacuum. Kuang Heng's palm was blocked, and he did not move. The river of time flowed between his fingers, causing the power of Lin Feng's 8 trigrams sky crashing hammer to decay. Even Lin Feng's right hand changed. He had achieved primordial spirit, and his body was not an ordinary one. However, at this moment, he was like a mortal. His skin was wrinkled, and it lost its luster. It was as if he had aged. Lin Feng's expression did not change. The Tai Chi pattern on his forehead rotated, and his arm instantly returned to its original state. His appearance did not change, but Kwang Hung, who had collided with his palm and fist, narrowed his eyes. In his perception, Lin Feng seemed to have turned into a huge Tai Chi pattern in an instant, spanning across the universe. At this moment, the void above the two of them surged with layers of purple chi, and a majestic white jade, celestial mountain flew out of the void. It was Yujing Mountain. Lin Feng flung his mana, and Shi Tianhao and the others, who he had put away before, were sent up Yujing Mountain. In the next moment, Yujing Mountain came crashing down towards Kwang Heng's head. Kwang Heng looked up at Yujing Mountain, and he was not surprised. Slowly, he said, "Yin Yang Elder, please show yourself." Chapter 590. There was not the slightest change or fluctuation in the void, only a mysterious bell ringing. Without warning, a large bell appeared above Yujing Mountain. Compared to Lin Feng's bell of good fortune, it was not as heavy and had a faint ethereal feel to it. The large bell was almost translucent, flashing with layers of light. It had no color and seemed to be condensed from countless spaces that had been folded and compressed together, condensing into such a strange large bell. Two streams of air, one black and one white, circled on both sides of the bell, displaying the changes of yin and yang. It was the void yin-yang bell from the Taishu Temple, which was as famous as the formation-breaking drum. These two magic treasures were recognized as the strongest below the creation level in the great Heaven Yuan world, and were also the most likely to reach the Mahayana level. Next to the void yin-yang bell stood an old man. His entire body floated in the void, as if he was transparent, and gave off a chaotic and unclear color. There were only two strands of long hair hanging down from his temples, one black and one white, like the polar opposites of yin and yang. This old man was called Yin Yang Wang, and was the origin spirit of the void yin-yang bell. His magic power and divine abilities were so strong that they were even stronger than Kwang Heng and Xianlin Taoist. After Yin Yang Wang appeared, he did not immediately look at Yujing Mountain below him. Instead, his gaze pierced through the void, looking at the bell of good fortune that was still fiercely battling the twin sky peaks in the ancient sky dragon domain. It's only at the spirit conception level the younger generation will surpass us in time. Yin Yang Wang sighed softly, retracted his gaze, and looked down at Yujing Mountain below. He gently patted the void Yin Yang bell beside him, and it immediately began to vibrate. However, there was no bell ringing, and the void in all directions began to tremble like water, covering the entire creation universe. Even the people in the divine land of the vast thousand domains seemed to feel the space they were in trembled slightly. The sound of the void yin-yang bell was not real sound, but the trembling of space. Under Yin-yang Wang's control, the black and white streams of air rotated faster and faster, carrying the void yin-yang bell down toward Yujing Mountain. The void yin-yang bell did not look very big and was no more than 10 feet tall, but the bottom of the bell was like a heaven-devouring black hole that was about to swallow the entire Yujing Mountain. He unleashed his divine ability, and the first person to feel that something was wrong was Lin Feng himself, because he suddenly discovered that there was a mysterious power as vast as the sky that was actually cutting off the 4-in-1 connection between him, Yujing Mountain, the profound heaven treasure tree, and the cyclic purple chi. Kwang Heng said indifferently, "The void yin-yang bell has evolved the power of space to the extreme. It can truly isolate the heavens. Aside from a treasure of fortune, no other power can block it. Although your celestial mountain is strong, it is not a complete entity. As long as it is not a complete entity, then it must rely on magic power and divine sense to connect. This kind of connection cannot be maintained in front of the void, yin-yang bell. Kwang Hung looked at Lin Feng calmly. You have always relied on the celestial mountain to escape into the void, rendering others helpless. But you have to know that there are many things in the world that counteract each other. There has never been a truly invincible existence. Lin Feng smiled faintly. Just as you said, is the void yin-yang bell invincible? Before he finished speaking, the profound heaven treasure tree at the top of Yujing Mountain suddenly shone brightly. The branches and leaves that covered the sky shook together. As the treasure light flowed, the void kept folding and changing, wanting to break through the void yin-yang bell's restrictive power. It is not among the 4 great spirit trees in the world, but it seems to be superior. Yin-yang Wang's body merged with the void yin-yang bell. The large bell that seemed to be chaotic and unfathomable kept vibrating. The power of the world barrier grew stronger. One black and one white. The 2 energies of yin and yang flowed, causing the power of the void yin-yang bell to grow stronger. It was actually about to overturn Yujing Mountain. Silently, Kwang Hung said, "The void yin-yang bell is indeed not invincible, but it can restrain your celestial mountain." Lin Feng's expression was still calm. He calmly glanced at the void yin-yang bell above his head, but ignored it. Instead, he faced Kwang Hung. His body suddenly lit up with a faint light. The light shone on Kwang Hung, and the river of time that flowed between Kwang Hung's fingers suddenly stopped. It was as if a river had entered winter and the water was frozen. But what kind of power could freeze the flow of time? If the flow of time and the corrosion of time could be stopped, then what else could destroy this light? Even though Kwang Hung's power was monstrous, the things in the light would forever stay in the perfect moment. Time and the world would not change at all. Immortal and indestructible, eternal and free. Eternal light. Kwang Hung revealed a look of shock. This is the concept of power contained in the primordial emperor's immortal dragon city. No wonder I felt something was wrong when I arrived at Western Tomb City. So Stone Feather had completely refined Immortal Dragon City. But how did you obtain eternal light? Stone Feather refining Immortal Dragon City is related to you. Is it because of that sword of yours? In an instant, Kwang Hung understood the cause and effect. He put his palms together and outlined Heaven's celestial city protected his body, blocking Lin Feng's attack. With Lin Feng's eternal light in hand, even though he couldn't completely restrain Kwang Hung's supreme light Dao fruit, he was able to block the power of time from the supreme light Dao fruit, so his magic power wouldn't be corroded by time. With this as a foundation, his attacks became stronger with each wave. Heaven punishing sword chi and primordial heaven opening mystic art attacked together. The 2 extreme powers of major destruction and major creation unified. The Tao of life and death reached a whole new level, directly breaking Kwang Hung's outline heaven, celestial city. Kwang Hung shouted in a low voice, "Rise!" His body suddenly lit up with boundless light, setting off a sea of light that swept in all directions. The light had an extremely pure concept of power that repelled all things. It didn't allow any impurities, and it isolated Lin Feng outside. Lin Feng looked carefully and saw that Kwang Hung was wearing a long robe. He couldn't see his true appearance, but it was flashing with light as if it was completely condensed from light. Magic treasure, boundless radiance, heavenly robe. Once this treasure appeared, it instantly blocked Lin Feng's attack. The incomparably ferocious heaven punishing sword chi broke the light, but the sea of light was boundless. The light waves were like the waves of the sea, endless and continuous, whittling away the heaven punishing sword chi. On the other side, the supreme formation breaking drum had already started fighting with Lin Feng's yin and yang life and death formation. The yin and yang life and death formation was completely activated. Countless light rays interweaved in the cosmic sea of stars with strange trajectories and rules, forming an incomparably huge formation. In the formation, profound and complicated runes rose and fell, and they combined together, gradually forming a huge pattern with black and white poles, covering the entire world. The universe, purple chi, and the central earth divine light formed the transformation of heaven and earth. At this moment, little Lin Tong was also sitting in the formation, combining with the death chi stone, forming the transformation of life and death. Other than that, a milky white flame rose in the formation, turning into pure yang qi. A purple crystal similarly flickered with light, stimulating the pure yin qi. The pure yang true fire and the netherworld purple crystal combined their powers. Yin and yang opposed and blended, evolving the transformation of the universe and the creation of all things. The yin and yang life and death formation. The six paths of life and death. The transformation of yin and yang. Inside the formation, a seemingly transparent leather that kept changing shape, flashing with brilliant lights and overflowing colors, turning into countless scenes. This was the apology gift that the Sky Fox Great Sage gave to Lin Feng, the Yuan Shen ancient skin, which was left behind by a mirage demon that had achieved the immortal demon soul realm when it was alive and was personally refined by the Sky Fox Great Sage. It really had endless illusory changes. Magnificent mountains and rivers, desolate deserts, raging waves in the deep sea, small bridges, starry sky. The 9 underworlds, one scene after another, kept evolving, like one world after another. And opposite the Yuan Shen ancient skin was a white jade stone, transparent and smooth as a mirror. This was the treasure that Shi Tianhao used to break Shi Tianyi's dual pupils, the illuminating heavenstone. Wherever the radiance of the illuminating heavenstone went, all illusory illusions were destroyed, restoring the original reality, and the illusions formed by the Yuan Shen ancient skin were dissolved one by one. The two sides unified opposites, forming a strange balance, but also combining the two extreme powers of illusory and real, pushing them to a new peak together. The yin and yang life and death formation. The 6 paths of life and death. The transformation of illusory and real. Before this, the yin and yang life and death formation that Lin Feng had mastered was always in an incomplete state. At least when the 6 paths of life and death, the 6 transformations, and the 12 treasures were gathered, and the 6 transformations were interconnected, the formation could be considered complete. When the complete yin and yang life and death formation appeared, each of the transformations of the 6 paths of life and death could exert its true power. Compared to the previous transformations of heaven and earth and the transformations of life and death, now even the transformations of yin and yang and the transformation of illusory and real were finally activated. The 4 transformations were activated together, and together with the previous transformations of heaven and earth and the transformation of life and death, they were much more powerful. The 4 transformations of heaven and earth, yin and yang, life and death, and illusory and real were performed together, and the overall strength of the yin and yang life and death formation reached a new height, almost turning into a complete world. But the Taishang formation breaking drum was also really fierce. The Taishang formation breaking immortal stood in front of the huge drum, the drumsticks beating nonstop, and the drum beats that shook the universe rang out one after another. One drum beat broke one layer of the yin and yang life and death formation, but the 4 layers of transformations cycled and reborn, making the Taishang formation breaking drum unable to break it completely. While Lin Feng battled with Kuang Heng, his other mind was used to control the yin and yang life and death formation. He casually pointed, and the eternal radiance poured into the yin and yang life and death formation. At the same time, the formation suddenly lit up with countless light spots. Every light spot was very small, like sand. The light constantly flickered, constantly extinguishing. It looked short and fragmented, insignificant, but shockingly merged with the fleeting true meaning of power of an instant. That was the most precious treasure produced by the Celeritas sword sect, the divine flash sand. The Celeritas sword sect cultivated the supreme divine ability, the sword escape, and needed the assistance of this treasure to merge with the concept of the instant. That day, when swordsman Flowing Light brought Tao Yaoyao to Yujing Mountain to ask for the heaven-mending vine, it was with this treasure as the price. Lin Feng had long since made a plan. He would first get the divine flash sand, then the eternal radiance. The concept of power that belonged to the two extremes of time, instant and eternity, merged into one in the yin and yang life and death formation at this moment, developing the endless mysteries of time. Yin and yang life and death formation, 6 paths of life and death, eternal instant transformation. The 5th layer transformation of the 6 paths of life and death also officially started. 5 kinds of profound, opposing powers of the two extremes spread out, causing the power of the yin and yang life and death formation to rise another level. The formation operated, and even the Taishang formation breaking drum wanted to break the transformation within became incomparably difficult. The Taishang formation breaking drum immortal, Kuang Hong, and Xianlin Taoist expressions all became solemn. The yin and yang life and death formation was like a monster that swallowed the heavens and the earth, constantly expanding, including the entire blue dome of heaven. But at this moment, heaven and earth suddenly trembled. A crack split open in the sea of stars, and a white sword chi rushed out from within. Heavenly, immortal sword chi. Shushan Sword Sect. Chapter 591. A beam of white sword chi split the galaxy and slashed straight at Lin Feng. It was the treasure of the Mount Shu Sword Sect, the strongest sword technique of the great heaven world, the heavenly, immortal sword chi. Lin Feng's eyes flashed slightly as he formed a sword seal with his right hand and pointed at the heavenly, immortal sword chi. A beam of terrifying gray sword chi met the attack head-on. It was the heaven-punishing sword chi. The 2 beams of terrifying sword chi, one gray and one white, collided. There was no violent reaction, only the void at the point of contact distorted and turned into a vortex. The vortex spun constantly, devouring everything around it, and even small stars were drawn into it. The vortex expanded again and again until the surrounding void could no longer bear it and collapsed together. The vortex exploded, and sword chi shot out in all directions like a meteor shower, filling the entire universe. Lin Feng counterattacked, but no longer paid attention to his opponent. Instead, he suddenly turned his head to look at the void yin-yang bell that was about to cover Mount Yujing. Exhausting the mysteries of space and the transformation of yin and yang is indeed extraordinary, Lin Feng said indifferently. But it's useless against me. As he spoke, the surface of Lin Feng's body suddenly glowed with a black and white light. At first, it was only a faint ray of light, but an incomparably terrifying aura suddenly pervaded the void. The sky was filled with light and clouds surrounding Lin Feng, while the black and white light alternated and flickered, becoming more and more dazzling, as if a sun of yin and yang was slowly rising. In the black and white sun, there seemed to be a god opening his eyes, majestically sweeping across the world and the universe. That terrifying power made everyone's hearts palpitate. Even though they were still in the ancient sky dragon domain and separated from Lin Feng by endless space, just seeing the appearance of this power was enough to make everyone below the primordial spirit realm tremble and kneel on the ground. It was as if mortals could not help but kowtow in worship of a god descending to earth. No matter how strong one's Tao heart, consciousness, or magical power was, they could only bow their heads at this moment. Although swordsman Flowing Light, swordsman Glorious Dawn, and other primordial spirit realm experts could still stand still, their expressions were extremely grave. They could only guarantee that they would not bow to the black and white light, but they were powerless to protect their disciples. Furthermore, He had only seen the black and white radiance from afar and had yet to truly become enemies with it. Only with the protection of the Qin Emperor, Shi, the people of the great Qin Empire were barely unaffected. However, everyone below the nascent divinity realm, including Shi Xingyun and Shi Chongyun, trembled nonstop as if they would collapse at any moment. At this moment, the smile on Wu Qingrou's face completely disappeared as she murmured, "Divine light of fortune, the master of the celestial gate also possesses the divine light of creation." Whether it was Shi Tianhao or Shi Tianyi, although they had activated the divine light of creation and awed the crowd, and even attracted the attention of nascent divinity warriors, they were still in the Golden Elixir period and the Yuanying period. The divine light of creation had just been reborn. What was terrifying was its limitless potential. Although it was immature, it was still heaven-defying and profound. At this moment, Lin Feng, who had already reached the primordial soul realm, was displaying his divine light of creation. At first, there was only a trace, but in the blink of an eye, black and white radiance appeared everywhere. The terrifying aura caused everyone's soul to tremble. The divine might filled the sky, suppressing the 9 heavens and 10 earths. In the end, the place where Lin Feng stood lit up with endless light. It was a vast expanse, and countless mysterious runes and diagrams densely covered the void. The divine light of creation was a unique and powerful force that would continue to grow stronger as its owner's cultivation base improved. At this moment, Lin Feng, who was in the black and white radiance, stood proudly in the void like a god descending to the world. He raised his head and looked at the void yin-yang bell that was about to cover Yujing Mountain. Immediately, a divine light was released. The endless radiance turned into a shocking rainbow, as if it was going to split the entire void in half. In a half-black and half-white radiance, the sky was filled with the chanting of gods and Buddhas. The light and shadows of the gods and Buddhas became tangible and stood together on the radiance. It was as if they were standing on a bridge that crossed the heavens and reached the other side. Lin Feng's divine light of creation flashed, and Yujing Mountain and the void yin-yang bell shook at the same time. Yin-yang Elder's expression suddenly changed. He took a step forward and merged with the Dharma treasure beside him. The void yin-yang bell shook the universe and quickly retreated, narrowly avoiding Lin Feng's divine light of creation. However, its Dharma power that targeted Yujing Mountain was immediately unable to continue. Yujing Mountain, the Xiantian treasure tree, and the cyclic purple qi re-established their connection with Lin Feng. Lin Feng ignored the void yin-yang bell and looked at Quang Hung again. Divine light of black and white radiated outwards, drowning the heavens and earth. Quang Hung was shocked. The supreme light, Tao fruit, appeared once again, but it did not affect him. Instead, it pushed out a complete Tao fruit. Under the effect of the Tao fruit, even the time the universe flowed rapidly, aging and decaying. However, it could do nothing to Lin Feng's divine light of creation. In the black and white radiance, Lin Feng suddenly rushed out. A flashing black and white heaven punishing sword qi directly pierced through the supreme light Tao fruit. In the next moment, Lin Feng was already beside Quang Hung. Quang Hung formed a seal with his hand, and a golden door of light lit up in the boundless sea of clouds. It was the central heavenly gate of the 9 heavens of Taishu technique. He wanted to use the central heavenly gate to open a way out and temporarily avoid Lin Feng's edge. It's too late to leave now. Lin Feng swung his fist, and the divine light of creation covered the heavens, directly destroying the golden door of light with a punch. In front of me, all doors are sealed. You have no way out. After shattering the central heavenly gate with a punch, Lin Feng's body flashed and continued to rush towards Quang Hung. He raised his palm and spread his fingers, turning into a giant hand that covered the sky and pressed down. Quang Hing's body also lit up with endless light. It was the great freedom light heavenly robe at work. Unfortunately, The light had just lit up when it was extinguished by Lin Feng's palm, as if he was crushing an incense stick with his fingers. Chi, Kuang Heng sent out another supreme light, Dao fruit. The Dao fruit suddenly exploded, but reversed the power of the passing of time, causing the flow of time in the entire universe to seemingly stop. Taking advantage of this time, Kuang Heng turned into a stream of light and escaped. However, the great freedom light heavenly robe was firmly grasped by Lin Feng's palm and could not break free. Kuang Heng could only escape by himself, abandoning the magic treasure. Lin Feng did not continue to chase after Kuang Heng. Instead, he put his palms together and slapped the great freedom light heavenly robe. As black and white light flashed, the original spirit of this magic treasure was destroyed. The pitiful great freedom light heavenly robe was considered a powerful magic treasure, but its original spirit was destroyed just like that. Lin Feng threw the shell of the great freedom light heavenly robe directly into the yin and yang life and death formation. Within the formation, there was already a pitch-black skeleton of a ferocious beast emitting boundless darkness. The skeleton of the primordial great demon, king of darkness, Mingdu, gave birth to the most extreme, primitive, and pure power of darkness. It had the power of ending and destruction and the power of silence, as well as the birth of all things, the birth of creation, the peace of peace, as if it was the mother of all things. However, when the great freedom light heavenly robe entered, this dark world immediately became incomparably violent and vicious, and the endless light of the great freedom light heavenly robe did not give way. In this opposition, both sides were stimulated with great power. The two extremes of light and darkness opposed each other, giving birth to endless changes. Yin and yang life and death formation, the six paths of life and death, the change of light and darkness. The first to realize that something was wrong was the primordial spirit of the supreme array breaking drum, the great drum immortal. He stared at the yin and yang life and death formation, his expression unprecedentedly serious. This was because at this moment, the yin and yang life and death formation was exploding with a shocking transformation. Heaven and earth, life and death, yin and yang, eternal instant, illusion and reality, light and darkness, the yin and yang life and death formation, the six paths of life and death, had finally reached the large success stage. The six paths were born at the same time, almost directly forming a whole new world. In the void of the universe, the vast power of the realms surged, causing friction with the original realms of the great thousand worlds, causing the borders of the two worlds to twist together. Evolving the vast thousand worlds, opening up creation, it can hardly be defined by the formation. The grand drum immortal took a deep breath and merged with the main body of the very high formation breaking drum beside him. The huge drum in the void sounded with a deafening drumbeat. With every beat, a vast radiance surged from the drum. Within the radiance, tens of thousands of talisman characters appeared, forming streams of light that wrapped around the world of creation formed by the yin and yang life and death formation. Tens of thousands of streams of light were like countless long rivers, and within the rivers, radiant divine talismans appeared. These streams of light were like chains that wrapped around the yin and yang life and death formation, trying to restrain and suppress it. As Lin Feng watched the chains of light wrap around the yin and yang life and death formation, he immediately formed a hand seal. Yin and yang life and death formation, 6 transformations and 3 techniques. Reverse polarity, activate. The 6 paths of life and death, the 6 transformations gathered together, and the yin and yang life and death formation gave birth to a brand new divine ability. This was a powerful divine ability that could only be produced by the gathering of the 12 formation treasures, and it pushed the power of the yin and yang life and death formation to a new peak. The first technique of the 3 new divine abilities, reverse polarity, was used and the mysterious power immediately broke the tens of thousands of chains of light released by the very high formation breaking drum. The new world formed by the formation underwent a shocking transformation. The world was turned upside down. The dead came back to life. Yin and yang were reversed. Time flowed backward. False returned to reality. Light and darkness were reversed. The entire world gave birth to a huge power of reversal and distortion. This majestic power even affected the vast thousand worlds that came into contact with this world. The void shattered and turned into nothingness. The very high formation breaking drum felt like it was in a deep-sea whirlpool, about to be torn apart by the twisting power. Boom, 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 boom. The drum beats were unprecedentedly urgent. Layers of light and clouds surged, like the sea's stabilizing divine needle, firmly nailed in the center of the storm, resisting the terrifying power of the whirlpool. Although the supreme formation-breaking drum had not been defeated, it had been forced into a passive defensive position by formation. This scene was still shocking to everyone. On the other side, an ordinary-looking middle-aged man in green appeared in front of Lin Feng. It was the sect leader of Mount Shu Sword Sect, Xian Longsheng. From a moment Lin Feng blocked Xian Longsheng's sword to the moment he activated the divine light of creation, repelled the void yin-yang bell, and snatched Kuang Heng's great freedom-radiant heavenly robe. Only a short moment had passed. And just as he destroyed the great freedom-radiant heavenly robe's primordial spirit and threw it into the yin and yang life and death formation, Xian Longsheng was already in front of him. The two looked at each other, and neither said a word. They raised their hands together, and immediately, two rays of sword qi, one gray and one white, stabbed at each other. Chapter 592. The two most powerful sword daos in the world collided once again, annihilating an expanse of stars. The sword dao was sharp and lethal, and it was an extremely ferocious divine ability. If Lin Feng and Xian Longsheng made even the slightest mistake, one of them would die. Xian Longsheng stood in the void with an ordinary longsword in his hand. He pointed the tip of the longsword at Lin Feng and shook it lightly. The white heavenly immortal sword qi was instantly compressed and condensed at the tip of the sword, turning into a dazzling white light. In the pitch-black universe, the white light was as dazzling as a star. In the next moment, the waterfall-like sword light poured down towards Lin Feng, like a river of stars rolling in reverse, surging and flying. Lin Feng didn't waste any more words with him, spreading out the heaven-punishing sword qi. The dusky, terrifying sword qi that slaughtered all life and destroyed all creation condensed into a line, splitting the vast white sky river in the middle with the force of splitting the sea. Xian Longsheng held the sword in his right hand and made a sword seal with his left hand before pointing it in the air. The white heavenly immortal sword qi suddenly condensed into white spirit talismans. These were not ordinary talismans, but terrifying sword talismans condensed from heavenly immortal sword qi. Xian Longsheng waved his hand, and tens of thousands of sword talismans appeared in the void. They were so densely packed that it was frightening to look at. These sword talismans were arranged in different numbers, 49, 72, 81, 108, and they formed different formations. Sword formations of different sizes stood in the starry sky, but they were all extremely profound and powerful. At the same time, their killing intent was astonishing. Thousands of sword formations were as dense as the stars in the sky, forming a starry sky composed of sword talismans and sword formations. Then, these terrifying sword formations gathered again to form a ball of light in the shape of a fruit. As soon as the ball of light appeared, before it could do anything, the surrounding void shattered. As expected of a sword cultivator, Lin Feng evaluated indifferently. Xian Longsheng really didn't hesitate and was extremely straightforward. After probing 3 sword strikes, he directly revealed his Dao fruit and intended to fight Lin Feng with his strongest strength. Xian Longshan calmly looked at Lin Feng and pointed his sword at Lin Feng. His heavenly immortal sword, Dao True Fruit, released a dazzling light that stabbed at Lin Feng. Thousands of sword talismans were born and destroyed, and thousands of sword formations changed. The power was shocking. Lin Feng did not move. Suddenly, a figure appeared in front of him. It was a girl with a sword case on her back and a long sword in her hand that was 1/3 rusted. She looked at the terrifying sword light in front of her expressionlessly. Xian Li's half-black and half-white hair fluttered in the wind. His originally black pupils suddenly became as red as blood. The heaven-punishing sword was raised high above his head, and a bright light shook the void. In the next moment, a trace of dark red light gradually appeared in that terrifying light. Xian Li slashed down with the heaven-punishing sword. As the clear light surged, there was a faint blood-red light. After the clear light reached its peak, it quickly retracted. However, the blood-red light became brighter and brighter. In a flash, it directly cut off Xian Longsheng's sword light. Xian Longsheng's eyes lit up when he saw the blood-red light. He activated his heavenly immortal sword, Dao True Fruit, and beams of light flew across the sky. However, facing the blood-red heaven-punishing sword light, it was like ordinary iron meeting a divine weapon that could cut iron like mud. All the sword light was cut off one after another. The heaven-punishing sword in Xian Li's hand moved, and the blood-red light drew a mysterious arc in the sky. It left a dark red mark in the dark sky, as if it was a wound of heaven and earth. The blood-red sword light pierced through the endless space and slashed toward Xian Longsheng's heavenly immortal sword, Dao True Fruit. Xian Longsheng's expression was extremely serious. The long sword in his hand stabbed into the heavenly immortal sword, Dao True Fruit. The mysterious power of the Dao fruit condensed into the sword, and sharp sword formations were engraved on the metal blade. As Xian Longsheng pulled out the long sword in his hand, the ordinary steel sword had already turned into a resplendent sword of light. Xian Longsheng held the sword of light and swung it in the void, accurately blocking the path of the blood-red heaven-punishing sword light. The two sides clashed, and the universe suddenly lit up with a resplendent rain of light, drowning out the entire void. The blood-red sword light shattered, and the long sword in Xian Longsheng's hand also shattered, no longer existing. Wu Qingru stared at the disappearing blood-red sword light and said without turning her head, "Your Majesty, can the immortal dragon city block this sword?" "It can, but it needs to activate the eternal radiance." Emperor Qin Stonefeather also stared at the blood-red heaven-punishing sword light. Given the sword's current state, the immortal dragon city can also block it if the Celestial Gate Sect Master personally controls it. The so-called current state naturally meant that 1/3 of the heaven-punishing sword blade was still unsharpened. Stonefeather stared at the heaven-punishing sword in Xian Li's hand. After clashing with the heavenly immortal sword Qi, the last 1/3 of the blade's rust was also gradually fading. Many primordial soul realm big shots noticed this and understood the meaning behind it. Everyone fell silent. On the other side, Lin Feng was not idle either. Since Xian Li was facing Xian Longsheng, he turned his target to Xianlin Taoist. As the black and white radiance flashed, Lin Feng had already killed his way to Xianlin Taoist, and the terrifying radiance shook the surroundings. Xianlin Taoist released his supreme Nirvana Dao fruit, and a terrifying power exploded, blasting the void into chaotic turbulence. Lin Feng stabbed out with the black and white heaven-punishing sword Qi and instantly destroyed the chaotic turbulence. Xianlin Taoist stepped onto the stone stairs and ascended into the sky. The stone stairs flashed with a white luster, and the white light rapidly turned into clouds in the void. When Lin Feng came into contact with a sea of white clouds, he immediately felt something was different. He looked up and saw Xianlin Taoist landing on the top of the stairs. If someone below the stairs wanted to attack someone on the stairs, their magical power would be greatly depleted. Their original power would be reduced to less than half when they attacked upward. Xianlin Taoist stood at the top of the stairs and put his palms together. The white clouds quickly turned golden, and the rumbling sound of thunder came from within. Fifth heavens of the great void realm, heavenly cloud dragon, lightning manipulation technique. Combined with the power of his supreme nirvana Tao fruit, the golden thunderclouds danced with lightning as if the end of the world was coming. When someone standing on the stairs attacked the opponent below, their magical power would be strengthened. Lin Feng witnessed this scene and moved his hands. His right hand used the heaven-punishing sword Qi to cut through the golden thunderclouds. His left thumb curled up in his palm, and the remaining 4 fingers spread out. The earth, water, fire, and wind jumped violently at his fingertips. Then the violent and chaotic earth, water, fire, and wind calmed down, and the world was restored. A bubble appeared, and after it burst, the clear and turbid air separated, and the world was created. The thumb of Lin Feng's left hand, that was curled up in the center of his palm, opened up. His 5 fingers formed a mysterious seal and grabbed towards the stone stairs under Tao Master Xuanlin's feet with a great power that could split the heavens and the earth. It was an extension of the primeval heaven opening technique, the primeval heaven opening palm. Lin Feng didn't care about Xianlin Taoist on the stone stairs at all. He grabbed at the stone stairs and pulled hard, almost shaking Xianlin Taoist off the stairs. Xianlin Taoist's expression changed slightly, and his boundless magical power came down, suppressing the stone stairs so that Lin Feng couldn't move. Taishu Temple's great Tao magical power poured down and attacked Lin Feng below the stairs. Lin Feng grabbed the stairs with his left hand and waved his right hand. One magical power after another collided with Xianlin Taoist, and Xianlin Taoist was on the verge of falling. Quang Hung was still calm when Lin Feng stripped him of the great freedom light robe. However, when he saw Lin Feng grabbing the stone stairs, his expression changed slightly. "Let go." Quang Hung made a seal in front of his chest, and 6 colorful halos appeared in front of him. The halos were of different colors, and the scenes in the halos were different as well. It was as if there were 6 independent small worlds, and the power of these 6 small worlds was added to Quang Heng's body, causing his body to glow with divine light. 7th heavens of the great void realm, harmonious 6 divine armor ritual. The power of the 6 small worlds added to his body caused Quang Heng's body to expand, and he turned into a giant. He took a step forward and arrived in front of Lin Feng. He slammed his palm down heavily, and the violent aura caused the creation divine light around Lin Feng's body to become unstable. Lin Feng's eyes narrowed, and the black and white divine light around his body suddenly paused. In the next moment, it exploded even more fiercely. In the light, countless gods almost materialized from light and shadow. They sang in unison, and the heavens and earth shook with the boundless light. It blended with the boundless light, and Quang Hung was forced to retreat. Amidst the singing and the light, it seemed as if a supreme being of heaven and earth, who could step on the reincarnation of the Yellow Springs, was being born. Lin Feng's body was surrounded by countless divine clouds. He shook his left hand again, and Xianlin Taoist was thrown off the stone stairs. After putting away the stone stairs, the creation divine light around Lin Feng's body dimmed a little, and the singing gradually became softer. He didn't continue to chase after Quang Hung and Xianlin Taoist. Instead, he took a step to Xian Li's side. In front of him, Xian Longsheng was empty-handed. He calmly looked at Lin Feng and Xian Li, and the heavenly immortal sword Qi around his body became even more powerful. What was even more terrifying was that behind Xian Longsheng's back, a faint sword light appeared in the void. The sword light didn't seem dazzling, and it even seemed a little weak, but an incomparably frightening aura came from it. It was even more frightening than the heaven-punishing sword, which was shining with boundless light and illuminating the endless void. A pure, white, jade-like sword slowly emerged from the void behind Xian Longsheng. Only the hilt of the sword was exposed, but it was already terrifying enough. In front of this sword, Lin Feng felt as if he was facing a real creation world. It wasn't an imitation of magic power or a divine ability, but a true creation. Heavenly, immortal sword. Lin Feng took a deep breath and watched as Xian Longsheng reached out to grab the hilt of the sword and pulled the white jade sword out of the void. Wherever the sword pointed, the world was thrown into chaos, and the creation world was shaken. The treasure of the Shu Mountain Sword Sect, the creation Dharma treasure, the heavenly, immortal sword. Among all the creation Dharma treasures in the entire heaven primordial world, it was the top existence in terms of pure, offensive power. Previously, when facing the immortal Dragon City, Lin Feng didn't continue to attack after the immortal Dragon City was completely refined. The immortal Dragon City only defended and didn't do anything else. Only now did Lin Feng truly face the power of a creation Dharma treasure. It was a creation Dharma treasure created to help humans resist the great calamity of the world and cross the bitter sea era. Xian Longsheng held the heavenly immortal sword in his hand, but he didn't swing it as freely as before. The white jade sword in his hand seemed to be carrying the weight of a world. Wherever his sword pointed, the spirit chi in the void of the entire universe and the vast thousand worlds gathered toward this sword. The endless spirit chi turned into an invisible sword light and pointed directly at Lin Feng. Even though Lin Feng can't see the formless edge, he can clearly feel the terrifying power of everything within it as the edge, heaven and earth as the sword. Chapter 593. In the ancient sky dragon domain, the old sword immortal, the flying snow sword venerable, the flowing light sword venerable, the brilliant sun sword venerable, the star constellation sword venerable, and the others trembled when they saw the white jade sword. In front of flowing light's sword master, an old man with long white hair and a tall crown appeared. It was not a physical body, but was composed of light and shadow. It was the treasure of the Flowing Light Sword Sect, the sword spirit of the Flowing Light Sword Sect. Almost at the same time, in front of Old Sword Immortal and some other people, several sword spirits also appeared, all of which were the primordial spirits of incarnation, level swords, and magic treasures. In addition, there were also spirit-nurturing level swords and magic treasures. Although the primordial spirits could not manifest, the blades were automatically unsheathed and suspended in mid-air. The other sword cultivators below the primordial spirit stage, as long as they were present, were unsheathed one after another, constantly vibrating in the air. The group of sword spirits, with solemn expressions, slowly bowed to the white jade sword in the endless void. The other magic treasure, swords that were directly unsheathed, also fell to the white jade sword. The swords below the level of magic treasure all fell to the ground, slightly trembling on the ground. When the immortal heaven sword appeared, tens of thousands of swords bowed their heads. Even old sword immortal, flowing light sword master, brilliant sun sword master, and the other great primordial spirit sword cultivators, in the face of the white jade sword, also lowered their prideful heads. The sword cultivators below the primordial spirit stage all knelt on one knee. No one would laugh at them. Everyone was shocked that they were able to witness the ancestor of all swords. The power and concept of the world as a sword made even the people in the ancient sky dragon domain feel as if they were in a sea of sword chi, and their bodies were surrounded by terrifying sword intent. And Lin Feng, who was directly facing the immortal heaven sword, felt as if the vast thousand domains he was in had turned into a murderous sharp sword, striking towards him with an earth-shattering force. It was a feeling of being the enemy of the entire world, which made one's mind tremble. Everything in the world had turned into the sharp sword of the enemy to kill him. Lin Feng reached out and gently patted the sword case behind Xian Li. Xian Li, who had been expressionless like a puppet, suddenly made a very human-like gesture. She pursed her lips tightly, as if she was very unwilling. But this time, she listened to Lin Feng's arrangement. Xian Li, who had been unwilling to merge back into the sword sheath since she appeared, took a step forward and merged back into the sword sheath. Lin Feng patted the scabbard lightly again. The top of the scabbard bounced open, and the Sky Destroyer sword slowly rose from within. Quick! Lin Feng grasped the Heaven Destroyer sword, and with a wave of the sword's edge, the myriad of murderous clear lights all converged, and the tip of the sword condensed into a wisp of dark red sword light that was as sharp as blood. At this moment, Xian Longsheng, who was wielding the immortal Heaven Sword, fiercely attacked. The square world seemed to have transformed into sharp sword projections that blotted out the sky and covered the earth as they attacked Lin Feng. Lin Feng took a deep breath and swung the Heaven Destroyer sword. Blood-red sword radiance flashed, splitting the sword radiance of heaven and earth. The terrifying sword intent that could destroy heaven and earth was completely unleashed. It was not targeted at an individual, nor was it targeted at a certain group, but the entire great Tao of heaven and earth, as well as the creation world, as the target to destroy. Whether there was life or not, as long as it existed, it would be destroyed. It was different from the sword Tao of Mount Shu, and different from any other killing sword in this world. Instead, it was a sword that could destroy heaven and earth. Although they were shocked by the terrifying power contained in Lin Feng's Heaven Destroyer sword, Kuang Heng, Xianlin Taoist, and the others breathed a sigh of relief. Emperor Qin Shiryu sighed slightly. What a pity! Unfortunately, the Heaven Destroyer sword in front of him had not been completely honed. Although the blood-red sword radiance was boundlessly domineering, it was like trying to put out a cart of firewood with a cup of water when faced with the immortal Heaven Sword that was condensed from the sword qi of the entire great Heaven Yuan world. It was not only in this universe, not only in the ancient Sky Dragon domain, but in the entire divine land, every existence that could be called a sword was trembling slightly. The sword intent of all the cultivators in the world that cultivated the way of the sword was boiling, uncontrollably soaring into the sky and gathering toward the universe in the sky. Xian Longsheng held the immortal Heaven Sword in his hand, as if he was controlling all the swords in the world. He was like the Emperor of Swords, and everything in the world belonged to him. The only exception was the Heaven Destroyer sword that was in Lin Feng's hand. At this moment, the Heaven Destroyer sword was like a rebel, proud and resolute in the face of the high and mighty immortal Heaven Sword. It was fearless even though the entire world was its enemy. It ignored the majesty of the Emperor and the siege of the world. The traitor that was condemned by thousands of people, or the only one that was pure when the entire world was dirty. Under the impact of the sword intent of the world, Lin Feng and the Heaven Destroyer sword were like a lonely boat that was constantly bobbing up and down. It looked like it was on the verge of collapse, as if it could be overturned by the next wave. Xian Longsheng had not said a word ever since he appeared. At this moment, his eyes were calm as he stared at Lin Feng and the Heaven Destroyer sword. He formed a sword seal with his left hand, and the sword intent of the immortal Heaven Sword that was as transparent as white jade in his right hand grew stronger and stronger, almost turning the world upside down. Lin Feng glanced at the Heaven Destroyer sword in his hand and saw that the rust on the last third of the blade was slowly fading under the attack of the immortal Heaven sword intent. However, the speed was still very slow, which was somewhat inappropriate in such a dangerous environment. Forget it. Let's settle the matter in front of us first. Lin Feng smiled slightly. The first, second, and third stages of the primordial spirit realm were completely different from the early, middle, and late stages of the Yuanying stage and the early, middle, and late stages of the Golden Elixir stage. In terms of cultivation difficulty, the difference between the Incarnation, Void Return, and Tao integration stages was basically the same as the difference between the three major stages of the Foundation establishment, Golden Elixir, and Yuanying. The difference in strength wasn't that terrifying, but it wasn't that big either. Even so, if they were both unarmed, Lin Feng, who was at the first stage of the primordial spirit realm and at the incarnation realm, would not be afraid to fight against Xian Longsheng, who was at the third stage of the primordial spirit realm and at the Tao integration realm. However, with the appearance of the immortal heaven sword, the situation was completely different. The Heaven Destroyer sword had not been completely honed, and Kuang Heng and the others were still eyeing it. Lin Feng patted his head, and a clear light was released, filling the starry sky of the universe. As the clear light flickered, outsiders couldn't see the scene clearly, but a Tai Chi diagram appeared. It was vast and boundless, and it was so huge that it seemed like a universe of its own. Black and white mixed and spun continuously, evolving into thousands of profound mysteries of creation. Above the Tai Chi diagram, rolling purple chi surged and turned into a vast sea of clouds. In the sea of clouds, the white jade immortal mountain stood tall, and the treasure tree at the top of the mountain shone with rainbow light. Endless astral winds and rolling thunderclouds prostrated at the foot of the white jade immortal mountain, becoming its stairs and guards. Together, they surrounded and protected this immortal mountain that seemed to be the ruler of the 9 heavens. The next moment, in the midst of the purple sea of clouds, the majestic white jade immortal mountain slowly descended, completely sinking into the Tai Chi diagram. The Tai Chi diagram spun and returned to the top of Lin Feng's head along the clear light. Lin Feng's eyes suddenly spewed out a vigorous purple light. Huff! With a soft shout, Lin Feng's entire body expanded rapidly, instantly becoming incomparably huge. It was difficult to calculate his height, as if he was a creation world. In the past, when he was in the Yuanying stage, his spirit had contained Jade Immortal Mountain, and it had almost caused him to explode. After much difficulty, he had finally accepted Jade Immortal Mountain, but his spirit had become sluggish, and he could barely use his magical powers. He could only barely activate the power of the Immortal Mountain. Today, he had formed his nascent soul and used his nascent soul incarnation to directly install Jade Immortal Mountain. However, he had taken control of Jade Immortal Mountain and turned its power into his own. Right now, he was just accommodating it, not completely refining it. When his cultivation level was higher and he truly integrated the power of Jade Immortal Mountain, his power would increase by another level. But even if he was just accommodating it, the enormous power made Lin Feng seem like the ruler of the universe. His body was so huge that it occupied the entire starry sky, like a giant god that had truly created the world. When he exhaled, there would be endless astral winds. When he stomped his feet, there would be tsunamis and landslides. When he opened and closed his eyes, it was like the sun and moon alternating. Even the sky-crushing sword in his hand had become incomparably huge. As the bright sword light flowed, it seemed like another galaxy spanning across the universe. Xian Longsheng, Immortal Heaven Sword, let's fight again now. Lin Feng calmly swung the sword. Suddenly, the entire world trembled slightly as if it had been cut open by this sword. A large number of small and medium-sized stars were destroyed, and even some large stars were shattered. The divine light in Xian Longsheng's eyes surged. He no longer held the immortal heaven sword in his hand. Instead, he raised the white jade-like immortal heaven sword. Then, he turned into a stream of light and attached himself to the immortal heaven sword. The immortal heaven sword emitted a lustrous light. It was not blazing, but it resonated with the laws of the world. The sword seemed to have become the heavenly Tao. It attracted the endless spirit energy of the world around it and turned it into a vast expanse of sword energy. Lin Feng's expression was indifferent. He pointed the sky-crushing sword in his hand, but he also attracted countless air currents that gathered towards the blood-red sword edge. Wherever the air currents passed, all living beings died and the void collapsed. Witnessing this scene, all the surrounding nascent soul experts were dumbfounded. Emperor Qin Shiyu, Kuang Heng, and Xianlin Taoist were all shocked. So that's how it is. This sword gathers the malevolent energy of the world to form its edge. Everything in the world was born and destroyed, but it was also ever-changing. When spirit energy was abundant, everything would grow and multiply, and the world would flourish. When malevolent energy was too abundant, everything would die and the world would reach its end. Malevolent energy was a part of the world's heavenly Tao, but it was also its mortal enemy. All cultivators gathered spirit energy into their bodies to comprehend the heavenly Tao. When they reached the peak, they would become their own world. No one would gather malevolent energy, because that was equivalent to suicide. Lin Feng was not gathering malevolent energy now. Instead, he was using the sky-crushing sword to control the malevolent energy, turning it into a sword edge that could destroy the world and slaughter the enemies in front of him. Wherever the sky-crushing sword pointed, the entire world was shrouded in a blood-red light. It was as if the end of the world was coming. The immortal heaven sword let out a crisp sword hum. It used the world as a sword to fight its mortal enemy. The two sides collided. Endless essence energy was destroyed, and a boundless light spread in all directions from the point of collision. To be able to fight against the immortal heaven sword, his power is equivalent to a creation treasure. In order to defeat him, the initial preparations must be put to use. Kuang Heng and Xianlin Taoist looked at each other and nodded at the same time. They attacked the yin and yang life and death formation together to help the formation-breaking drum, which was in a stalemate with the formation, break out. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.